Good morning, Commissioners, Chief McDonald, Executive Director Sibley, Madam Secretary, Assistant Inspector General Brian Buckner, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, January 28, 2024. It is 9:31 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect Commissioners Suthers, Shields, Calanche, Garcia, and Sanchez-Gordon are present, and we have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the Board Secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be a speaker in the room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We'll alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentation and dialogue in real time, and provides feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there is a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. At this time, we'll move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police, Chief McDonald.
Morning, President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Acting Inspector General Buckner, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Mr. Sibley. Today I'll be discussing significant events from the previous 3 weeks, providing a crime update, and discussing our personnel strength. During the previous 3 weeks, we've had 2 officer-involved shootings within our southwest area, and I'll discuss below. First one on January 11th, 2025, about 11 a.m., Southwest Patrol officers responded to a radio call of an assault with a deadly weapon stabbing at 915 West 23rd Street. Inside the multi-unit residential treatment facility, a suspect later identified as Brian Rolstad, a resident of the facility, stabbed a staff member in the face with a folding knife. As officers approached the location, they met with the victim and witnesses and attempted to ascertain Rolstad's location. In the interim, additional patrol units arrived and formed a tactical team to call out Rolstad. During the call-out, Rolstad emerged from the location and began to advance on the team of officers armed with the knife. Officers gave commands for Rolstad to drop the knife. He did not comply, resulting in an officer discharging 4 rounds from a beanbag shotgun. The beanbag rounds were only momentarily effective, and Rolstad continued to advance on officers while still armed with the knife. As officers attempted to redeploy onto the sidewalk and street, an officer-involved shooting occurred, and Rolstad was struck in the chest by gunfire. He immediately dropped to the ground, and after a short period, an arrest team approached and took him into custody without further incident. The victim and Rolstad were transported to a local hospital. Rolstad was pronounced deceased by hospital staff. The victim was treated for a stab wound and discharged. A black 6-inch folding knife with an approximately 2.5-inch blade was located in the roadway where Rolstad collapsed, which was collected as evidence. Force Investigation Division investigators responded to the scene and are investigating the incident. On January 20th, about 20:55 hours, a suspect later identified as Tiffany Shanae Rufus exited her residence and used a blunt object to break the front window of her apartment and the window of 2 adjacent apartments. The vandalism prompted multiple people, including Rufus's mother, to call 911. Additionally, Rufus's mother told Communications Division that Rufus suffered from mental illness. Southwest Patrol officers responded to the apartment complex and were directed by the vandalism victims and Rufus's mother to apartment 24, where Rufus had returned to. Officers requested additional units to the location and formed a tactical team outside Rufus's apartment. Officers attempted to communicate with Rufus, however, she refused to comply with commands. Officers obtained an apartment key from Rufus's mother and used it to open the front door of the apartment. Rufus emerged at the threshold of the front door, armed with a metal stove grate, and swung it at officers. A taser was discharged, however, it was ineffective, and Rufus continued to swing the grate at officers, which resulted in an officer-involved shooting. Rufus fled to the bedroom of the apartment and shortly after surrendered to officers without further incident. Rufus was transported to a local hospital for taser puncture wounds to her right and left forearms. Rufus was subsequently cleared by medical staff and booked at 77th Regional Jail Section. No officers or other community members were injured during the incident. An approximately 20-inch black metal stove grate was recovered from the scene and booked as evidence. Force Investigation Division investigators responded to the scene and are investigating the incident. Year to date, we've had 2 officer-involved shootings in comparison to last year, which was also 2, so we're even on that. Over the past 3 weeks, the city of Los Angeles has faced several devastating fires, including the Palisades, Hearst, Sunset, and Sepulveda fires. During this time, our department went on tactical alert to ensure we could quickly and effectively respond to these significant incidents. Our personnel were at the forefront, assisting with evacuations of residents and businesses to ensure everyone's safety. Once the evacuations were complete, officers worked to secure the perimeters, prevent unauthorized entry, and conduct crime suppression patrols to protect evacuated properties. In addition to this, our department participated in investigating the origins of these fires and assisted in the recovery of deceased individuals. We work closely with our partner agencies, including the Los Angeles World Airports Police, Port Police, California Highway Patrol, Los Angeles School Police, and the National Guard. Together, we focused on protecting lives and ensuring the safety of our communities. This has been a challenging time for everyone, especially for our own employees. 21 of our department members lost their homes in the Eaton and Palisades fires. Many more were evacuated from their homes, but still reported for duty to serve the city during this crisis. I'm incredibly proud of how our department has handled this major event and continue to support the recovery process. These fires have taken a significant toll on our resources and our people, but we remain committed to helping our community rebuild. It'll be a long road to recovery, but we're ready to do our part every step of the way. Even as our resources stretch by extraordinary duties, our department remains focused on addressing crime across the city. You may have noticed fencing recently placed within the Alvarado corridor near MacArthur Park. This is part of our effort to deter criminal street vending, which involves selling stolen goods and merchandise.
Excuse me, Chief.
Unfortunately, many of these
Chief,
vendors...
Excuse me, Chief. Can the woman in the audience please stop talking so we can have the chief give his report uninterrupted? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief, please continue.
Sure. You may have noticed fencing recently placed within the Alvarado corridor near MacArthur Park. This is part of our effort to deter criminal street vending, which involves selling stolen goods and merchandise to the community. Unfortunately, many of these vendors are linked to local street gangs. Along with stolen goods, they've also been found selling narcotics and engaging in other criminal activity. Recently, we've had a shooting in the area where 6 people were struck by gunfire, which included the suspect. Preliminary information suggests this incident may be gang-related. The suspect in this shooting has been charged with 5 counts of attempted murder. As a department, we're committed to finding innovative solutions to restore MacArthur Park as a safe and family-friendly space for citizens of Los Angeles to enjoy. We'll continue to address crime in the area and work to make it a place everyone can feel proud of. Over the past 4 weeks, the City of LA has seen an overall reduction in crime compared to the previous 4-week period. Combined persons and property crimes are down 17.7%. Specifically, persons crimes have decreased 1.8%, while property crimes saw a more significant decline of 21.6%. Year-to-date, the city has experienced 37.5% decrease in homicides compared to the same period in 2024, with 6 fewer homicides reported. Over the past 4 weeks, homicides are down 13.3% compared to the previous period, reflecting a positive trend in this critical area. Citywide, the year-to-date number of victims shot is down 32.6% compared to last year. Aggravated assaults decreased by 3.3% over the past 4 weeks compared to the prior period, and robberies increased 3.5% during the most recent 4 weeks. No notable patterns or trends that are directly attributed to this increase. Burglary saw a significant decline of 33.6% citywide. Residential burglaries were down by 37%, and non-residential burglaries decreased by 25%. Motor vehicle thefts decreased slightly, just under 1% over the past 4 weeks. On the personnel front, our personnel strength as of January 27th, sworn personnel, we're currently at 8,784, and civilian personnel staffing is 2,676. We still maintain a strength of 380 reserve officers. Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report to the Commission.
Thank you, Chief, and I'd just like to commend you and the department, the men and women that have been out there since our last meeting when the fire started that same day. And as we were notified later that day that the fires were 20 acres and then less than a half hour later was 200 acres. And I know you've been down there every single day. People are working 12 hours on, 12 hours off. We really appreciate it. In spite of the fact that we have officers, 20, who've lost their homes and they're still working. So again, and just on behalf of the commission, just like to send our support and condolence and prayers to the people that live in the city that have been victimized. It's going to be a long road back, but thank you for the hard work that you're doing. And so what I'd like to do now is go ahead and give Vice President Shields an opportunity for comment or questions.
Thank you, President Southers, and thank you, Chief, for the report. First, my heart goes out to all of the folks in the Eaton area and the Palisades and everywhere else people who've lost their homes due to these tragedies. And I want to commend both the fire department and the police department for working seamlessly together. I was very impressed by the mutual respect that I saw both at the command posts, at the emergency operations division, and really the department helping the fire department do their job safely by also evacuating people in a timely manner. And I know how much of a strain that was on the department resources. And I do think that there's so many parts of the department that really stepped up during this tragedy. And I just want to commend them from both, the officers on the ground to command staff, the Metropolitan Division, who made some significant arrests during that time, Force Investigation Division, Robbery Homicide, the Commission Investigation Division going out there, air support, all the employee resources groups that have really stepped up to help the impacted employees, all the nonprofit organizations that are not only helping first responders, but teachers and so many people who've been devastated, and all the partner agencies. I think that, out of all the tragedy, the fact of everyone kind of coming together to help their fellow neighbor is the one thing that I think we can take out of this. And I imagine at a later date, you'll be able to kind of come back and tell us some lessons learned or some after action of we didn't know this was going to be happening even while we sat here on the commission day. And had you known, what would have been the things that could have better prepared all of us for this? both working with the fire department, the equipment that the department has. So at some point, I'd like to hear a little bit of, I think a lot of things have gone right, but to the extent that there are ways that can be improved in case there's any other, calamities that come to the city, I'd like to know what has been the lessons learned. And you also mentioned that, the department has been on a tactical alert. And can you talk a little bit about what that means, how that impacts the department and the city, and to the extent that how much longer will the department be under a tactical alert?
Thank you, Commissioner. A tactical alert means that the department answers radio calls of significant importance. So a lot of the calls we would normally respond to, quality of life issues or lower level potentially crimes, we don't respond to those. There are other means of taking a report for those. So it allows us to be able to focus limited resources toward a specific problem, in this case the fires, for the period we need to do that so that we can use our personnel as wisely as we can. That will go on for as long as we need to be able to continue to deploy to the fires. Now, we're looking forward to being able to come off that status, because as soon as we do, then we can provide a greater level of service throughout the city to our residents.
Thank you. And having seen some of the devastation that's out there and knowing that the personnel of the department have been exposed to that and are helping, both with the collection of remains and conducting investigations and kind of the day in, day out continued exposure to that, is there any effort by the department to make sure that they have both all the resources they need to protect themselves physically and also mentally?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's something that we certainly are looking at. We had behavioral sciences services section out with us throughout this, looking out for our people's mental health, how they're dealing with this, particularly those who are out there after losing everything they own, are dealing with family issues as it relates to that. Others had houses that were severely damaged, and many of them still wanted to respond and play a role in helping others. So we have I think those issues being covered as well as we can for the moment. The long-term fallout from these type of events aren't realized right away. But we also, as far as wearing masks or doing the things, I would like to have seen a greater level of understanding as to what we're dealing with in that regard. We advise people about the particulate matter and the potential for injury from that. But when you went out there, you get a feel, you're running around, they're trying to evacuate people, and they're just looking at getting the job done, the mission accomplished, and not really thinking about themselves. And so, as you mentioned earlier, what would be a lesson learned, it would be to make a greater emphasis, I think, on how we respond. Do we have PPE gear available for all of our folks, and at what level? And that's something that we don't have answers for yet, but I'm hopeful in the biopsy of this whole incident down the road, we'll get a better handle on what could have been helpful as preventative measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche?
Thank you, Chief. Two quick questions. One is dovetailing on what Commissioner Shields just brought up. Were there any impacts being on tactical alert and having resources focused on security and response to the areas that were impacted? Were there any impacts to tactical response or any other areas where we could have seen any increase in crime because we had so many dedicated services or resources to those impacted areas? And then I have a different question.
Yeah, certainly. Anytime we go on a tactical alert or a department mobilization, we do see impacts felt elsewhere throughout the organization. And whether that's increased crime numbers or a decrease in arrest numbers, those things are part of what happens. We have to be able to, as efficiently as we can, deploy our resources. But we know with limited resources to begin with, when you move them from one area to another, there is opportunity costs in the area that they were moved from. And so that's why, as I mentioned, we're looking to get off tactical alert as soon as we possibly can and get back into the day-to-day business of providing police service.
Got it. So at this point, we don't have any data to show if there was an impact or not, but it's something I'm assuming that you would look into.
We'll look into it. Some of this is hard to quantify because you can't count what didn't happen or what the opportunity cost might have been. But I think we can anecdotally say that there is an impact felt whenever we move personnel from one area to another.
Got it. A separate question is related to, I saw on the news this morning that 2 officers were injured in a pursuit.
Right.
So just wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about that. And I know that as a commission, we're really concerned about pursuit policies. But if you could talk about that and give us any status of the officers plus the individual that was not part of the chase that was also potentially hurt. I don't have a lot of information, so if you could provide that.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of information other than particularly on the other person you mentioned, on the 2 officers. They were treated and released, and so no serious injury on their part.
Okay.
And certainly, we look very closely at every pursuit to be able to ensure that it's called off if that's what's appropriate, either by the responding the unit involved, secondary units, supervisors, or managers, watch commanders at the station who are monitoring the pursuit if it gets to be unsafe.
What happens when, what I'm assuming from what I heard on the news is that our patrol unit hit the individual, I guess the non-chased individual, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd have to get back with you, more information on that. I've been running all morning myself.
I just wanted to, I guess the bigger question is what happens when we end up hitting somebody that wasn't involved in the chase, sorry.
I mean, what happens is we get them medical attention and then try as best we can to facilitate whatever their needs are. In most cases, as you can imagine, there will be some kind of civil action resulting from an incident like this.
President Southers, I guess my question is is there a policy? Maybe we can review to see in the pursuit policy. This is more like a commission thing where what is our policy when we end up potentially injuring a bystander that wasn't involved? I'm just curious as to if the department has a policy.
It's I mean, to call it a policy, we don't. It's not part of the way we do business. It's an inadvertent action based on what they're dealing with. It's essentially an accident, and so to have a policy to preclude an accident is not something.
No.
that
I'm
we can
saying
do.
how we respond. So I'm just curious as to because this happens quite a bit in our pursuits.
Yeah.
And so what is it that we do? What are the steps? Do we just call so it's something that I just kind of want to look into just to see, just so that I know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just for my own edification to know how we respond, what we do at the scene.
Yeah. There is an investigation done of anything like this, a very exhaustive investigation. Our risk management detectives and officers roll out there as well. They do their own investigation and then work with the city attorney to be able to help make the person whole as best they can. But as I mentioned, oftentimes these end up in litigation and something happens down the road then to resolve the issue.
Okay. That was it.
Commissioner, if I can, the Inspector General's office has already started an audit of vehicle pursuits that resulted in crashes, resulting in serious bodily injury or death. So that's already in process.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chief, for the report. Just really wanted to say a few things about the folks impacted by the fires. And it's devastating and it's unfortunate. And I was out there quite a bit, whether it was delivering PPE or food or coffee or pastries, whatever we can get to folks at the different places. This is going to be a long path to recovery, and really just ask our officers to have grace on the folks that were impacted and an understanding of the emotions and the phases of trauma and processing what those individuals are going through as we continue to work with folks trying to get in and out of their communities to move forward.
Right.
And again, that's a long-term thing, so hopefully we can figure out a way to potentially do some kind of training specific to this incident and the recovery, and include some of those trauma-informed practices and understanding so that our officers are better able to communicate and engage with the community who is going through this, because it's one thing to perceive someone as being out of place, for the lack of a better word, but the reality is that they are going through a devastating loss and a significant loss. And so as much as possible, if we can, try to create something so that there is that grace and understanding applied. And again, this isn't for the next 2 weeks. It's a long-term thing that we will have to ensure that we are holding our community in a safe space or in a safe manner as much as possible as we get through this. And with that, also just want to applaud the coordination between the department and all the other emergency responses. I was able to go to some of the different emergency operations centers and command posts, and really got to see how folks were communicating and how it ramped up really quick to get as many resources into town as possible. Not just the coordination with those departments that exist here, but neighboring departments. And so applaud the officers for that.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez Gordon.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Chief, I also echo many of the sentiments. I also echo many of the sentiments of my colleagues and commissioners, and commend the police for their dedication to help the residents, our city, our county, during this very catastrophic and disastrous period.
Ma'am, excuse me, Commissioner.
All right.
Ma'am, one person's going to speak at a time. If you can't be quiet, you're going to be removed from the room.
I also recognize,
Excuse me. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I also want to recognize and thank the dedicated members of the police department and staff, those 21 that also were affected personally by the fires and continued their service within our city.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Before we move on, we're going to be pulling consent agenda item 3M and closed session item 5A2 today. Commissioner Shields will be departing early, and those are going to require a little more discussion, so we'll be hearing them at a later date. We'll now go on to the public comment period. Madam Secretary, please call us first speaker.
The first speaker is Jonathan Foster.
Hello, Jonathan Foster, staying ahead. So I talked about Sonia Massey, Takar Smith, and they were, by the way, no officer shoot me, because I'm going to hold my hands above my head, so don't take your gun out and shoot me. All these people were holding something over their head. Sonia Massey was holding a pot, and she was shot in Ohio, but Takar Smith here had a knife over his head, but he was on his knees and they shot him. He could have got out of the way of the door and saved his life, but they didn't. Eric Rivera, after I've read the report many, many, many times, Eric Rivera held his green squirt gun above his head, showing the police department that it was a green squirt gun, and they got out without putting the car in park. They boom him, and then the car drove on him. They couldn't tell it was a green squirt gun. Then there's Raymond Hernandez. He was shot three different officers 3 times. He held the gun above his head, but he was holding it on the butt of the gun, standing behind his son. Not in this jurisdiction, but close around here, because this chief talks to all the chiefs. There were 3 teenagers on BMX bikes on the sidewalk. They got told to pull over when the cops said, put your hands up, and they were off the bikes. And the one kid, he did like this, and then when he tried to get his hat back on, they boom, 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 the 2 out of 3, 2 of them were dead. They were only teenagers. So holding something over your head is a reason for officers to shoot. That's what all these actions are reasonable. That's what they say. Okay? And reevaluate and assign what the conduct was to be. That needs to change. With 1 minute, not enough. You spend $130,000 a year on Jose Espinoza. That's $2 million in the last 16 years. How much cheaper would it have been to turn him over to ICE and have him out of here? Now, I wrote over here, it said, check on Gresario Max, sober off, vote was out of policy, but he said, and then there's a blank. Do you see that blank right here? I didn't write down what I was going to say was I need to throw the sober off his dead party before he's dead. One more.
Really the tragic death of a motorist who was killed by someone fleeing from law enforcement.
And what you should do is recommend to elected people that if you kill somebody fleeing from the police, that should be murder. And if you don't kill them, it should be attempted murder. No one said that.
Thank you.
Next we have Philip Tabby.
Good morning. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. I want to remind this commission that this pledge should be said at every meeting. This is the United States of America constitutional republic, and we the people are in charge. No longer will we tolerate the incompetence of any body that does not represent the people the way they are supposed to. Eliminate DEI. If any of you are paying attention, DEI is dead on the federal level. Martin Luther King wanted a colorblind society, but instead we ended up with more racism with policies this commission approves. LAPD must return to meritocracy and hire and promote the best, and not based on or limited to color, gender, or creed. Eliminate the DEI department led by a do-nothing deputy chief. Yes, Ruby Flores is a disgrace to Operations Valley Bureau. Not once have I seen any communications for the public from our deputy chief. Instead, I see photos of do-nothing Ruby Flores promoting soft on crime Monica Rodriguez, who led the push to defund the LAPD. Never have I seen do-nothing Ruby talk about crime or address the public on crime-related issues. Remove Ruby immediately from OVB. Chief McDonald, I advise you to talk to your officers who work alongside her and John Shaw. You may learn a few troubling things that will convince you to make major changes. DEI must DIE in the LAPD. Another thing that must go is the illegal vaccine mandate. Chief, I have not seen you speak on this topic, and it's about time you do, because I am holding you accountable, sir. If I don't see you fighting for your officers, I will consider you compromised like the rest of Los Angeles. Los Angeles's incompetent leadership. Chief, please read the letters sent by Voices for LAPD. I am one of the voices who collaborated on that letter. One of the many things LAPD lacks is communication. All meetings for the community must be published on the lapd.online or website. Fix your community relation offices. They do a poor job of communicating any information to the public. It seems the information is available, if only for those that are special and do not and it's not for the entire community. Fire Liz Rhodes, move Captain Loose Hands Marco Lozano, return the blue line flag immediately. And commissioners, show up to every meeting. I'm shocked that you're all here today. God bless the LAPD.
The next speaker is Mr. Herman.
Right, Eroy? Good morning and happy anniversary, Eroy. I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. So, Mr. Eroy, we heard in the conversation of the chief, sir, as I am the new president, Donald Trump, on the conditions of Tiffany's vandalism, the Palisades fires for safety and protection and property by unauthorized, illegal, criminal activity. Fuck the police. That's not your job. That is your job. Your job is to protect, not get up there in front of the goddamn camera and tell us what you're doing, but do it. That's what we pay you to do. Thank you, Eroy. Give him that look. But it's not Jim's fault. Jim's not a fireman. Jim's a policeman, a master at his job. Not only with Long Beach Sheriff, but also former LAPD, and now he's the top dog. Versus that other dumb bitch who couldn't turn the valve on to put the water to give it to Miss Crawley to turn off the fire. Ain't that a motherfucker? That's a bitch. And then we go to the 20 homes in Eaton crisis. Well, goddamn. You niggers wanted all those people out of Altadena. Oh, yeah. Earl, I'm talking about Eaton. I'm talking about Altadena. Get control of your people, bro. This is America. It's the First Amendment. I'm exercising the best to my ability, Earl. Now into my general public comment of non-agenda. Now that's offensive. Into the record, Brandenburg versus Ohio, 395 USS 444, 1969. You know, yeah, I'm a dirty nigger. I speak out. I'm a dirty
This seems like off
motherfucking
topic
nigger.
to me,
And
sir.
I speak out of my mind about the facts and truth about America, how fucked up it is. Simplified fucking faggots. That's
You're off
right.
topic. You're off topic.
Oh, no,
Stay
I'm
on topic.
talking about Brandenburg versus
You are
Ohio.
off topic.
All right, then let me redirect that.
You're off topic.
When the Torrance police put the Nazi sign here,
You are off
when
topic.
they put that shit,
Step away from the podium. Step away from the podium. Your comment has been concluded. Your public comment has been concluded. Your public comment has been concluded. Step away from the podium. This is your first and last warning for disrupting the meeting. Sir, sit down. Madam Secretary, please call the next speaker.
Next, we have Mo.
Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Chief, Commissioners, OIG, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Today, I want to tell you about a young lady that was molested, raped, abused for years by her father. Scientology moved him out of the state and the country to get him away from being prosecuted. She was also part of the child labor factory and suffers tremendous emotional distress from the years of abuse. Her case is in your system already. Sad but
Ma'am, I'm
true.
sorry to interrupt you. Sir, you've had your first and last warning. Get out of the room. You're being removed for giving the finger in the camera. Get up and get out now. Get up and get out now. I'm talking to your friend in front of you. Gentleman dressed as Batman, you are being removed from the room. Sir, leave the room. My apologies, ma'am. Please continue.
No worries. Thank you, sir. Her case is in your system. Sad but true. There's a recent survey showed survivors of the Scientology cult showed 84% of those that grew up in the cult have attempted suicide or have suicidal ideation. The crimes of child abuse, sexual abuse, and human trafficking are still happening today, behind the blue walls. Those exposing the crimes
Ma'am,
are
I'm sorry.
having
I have to
cases.
interrupt you again. Put the puppet down. This is your first and last warning. Put the puppet down. Ma'am, please continue.
Thank you, sir. Some of these frivolous cases that are being brought by the cult has billions of tax-exempt dollars at their disposal to throw at the protesters. Manufacturing evidence is no problem for such a cash-rich cult. It really does feel like David and Goliath. 3 minutes just aren't enough time. 3 things I'd like to see from this comment. 1, to have Janet Whelan or any Scientology representative be removed from the CPAB or an advisory position until the investigation is complete. Besides the criminal activity, they are registered lobbyists and don't belong on an advisory board. 2, all investigations against protesters relating to Scientology be paused due to the conflict of interest. And 3, I have requested a meeting in writing with you, Sir Mr. Chief, through your executive team to bring the evidence together as a claim. I would appreciate a response from your executive team to my letter. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
The next speaker, Andrew Graebner.
Starting off with the Chief's report. The Chief's report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting. If the Chief's report exceeds 3 minutes, we should get the same amount of time that he took over that 3 minutes. And everyone should be able to speak regardless of how long he takes. So you all spent about, I don't know, I guess you all consider yourselves to be part of the LAPD or something now. But we have, but the LAPD spent all this time at the beginning of the fires, taking up airspace that could have been used for, public information about evacuation sites, what's going on with the fires and such, to spend all this time talking about all these looters that's supposedly going. That's what you were all doing. You were talking about looters, searching for looters, whatever. And then we get to the police commission meeting, and you openly admit that crime was way down over the last 2 weeks. By rates as much as more than 30%. So crime was way down. So why were you spending all this time during city press conferences that could have been used to give information about the fires, information about evacuation sites, updates on what was going on, just give these whole spiels about looters when you knew that crime was down more than 30% in some areas. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Let's see. So for the consent agenda, we have, let's see, we have more training. More training. There's gonna be more violent. We have an $11,000 ice machine. So I looked it up online. I could find ice machines for like, $200, So why is your ice machine $11,000? So I mean, I guess this is a donation, which is another whole thing. But I mean, there's not even enough money to put out these fires and provide help because you got all the money. And here we are, we're buying $11,000 ice machines. I mean, let's learn to be a little bit more frugal, so maybe some of that money could go back to, putting out fires and such. How about you just buy some, bags of ice or, $11,000 for ice machines. Just unbelievable. $10,000 for the police concert band. Let's see. $47,000 for this AI thing. $11,000 for drone? I don't even know what this is.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Zeno OT8.
Good morning, Chief. I'm the second person to turn on to submit my card today. Just let you know. First of all, I want to respond to the Commissioner Kalanche's question. I believe Commissioner Kalanche asked a really good question about the pursuit. And then, if you allow me, Chief, I recommend you to look at the Beverly Hills Police Department video. They have a special pursuit devices where the police officer's front bumper shooting a special devices to the rear bumper of the suspect's vehicle, and then so everybody can back off. So there will be no lateral damages during the pursuit. So I recommend you, but at the same time, LAPD is most defunded, most defunded police department in the nation. So I probably don't know if you guys can afford it, but that's a really good device. You definitely should look into that. Plus, Commissioner Kalanche, before, there's another thing she referenced about the drones. And then also, I recommend you to take a look at the Santa Monica drone program, the Beverly Hills drone program. Their watch commander, at any given time, 24/7, they can see all area within their city of the Beverly Hills because they have a drones control center. Within 1 minute, their captain, lieutenant, they have the eyes on the road. It's absolutely amazing. So we definitely need that kind of technology to fight the crime. So definitely I recommend you to do that. Another thing about the viral video, I'm not sure if you are aware, but I saw that viral video today. There's a Waymo or driverless vehicle was being looted and attacked. I'm not sure if you see that on the breaking news. And then I'm a little bit concerned for two things. Number one, I'm concerned the LAPD will never catch those so-called teenagers, mobs, and then that will promote such behavior in the future as a domino effect. There's no consequence, there's no punishment, they will do more and more often. Number two is that I'm concerned about their skin color because I'm seeing that whenever a white people do something, they got arrested. But whenever a black people do something, they were being ignored. On the metro train, I have seen that. I don't understand why, but when white people attack a black, that's called a hate crime. But when a black attacked a white, there was never talking about a hate crime. So I don't feel the law is applied to all colors the equal way, the same way. So I really wish we take a closer look of those attack on the vehicle. Hopefully, I really wish we can have an investigation and then put anyone responsible into custody. That's my hope.
The next speaker, Audit LA.
Thank you. Good morning. I do want to say first that, my thoughts and prayers to everyone affected by the fires. My thanks to everyone that showed up to make a difference, fire, police, and the private citizens. And I hope everyone in the city is restored. But I'm here to stay on topic with what I come here for, and that is also talking about Scientology. And I have somebody, a second-gen survivor of Scientology, on my chat right now who would like to be able to get in and speak, but the queue doesn't always work that way. But somebody who survived a hellish growing up in that blue building and in their RPF, which is their version of like a correctional facility. Yes, it's like they have a jail in that building. Okay, and they do hold you without, you can't just come and go. But as much as we come and speak about this, it seems to fall on deaf ears because nobody wants to deal with it. And I on some level, I get it. They're scary. I mean, I feel under threat by them. But I'm here to just ask, besides the meeting we've been asking for, I am asking you to remove them from any capacity to advise LAPD on your CPAPs. Also the bids, because that's what they do. They have such a heavy influence, sir, especially with Hollywood Division and Northeast Division, and it's growing with North Hollywood Division. It's a newer building now. But it's so deep that I've even had an officer do something that I found intimidating, because, and he's considered one of the higher, like Scientology police. They have such a connection. And I'm asking you to remove that. They're also lobbyists at this point. And so they are registered as lobbyists. And so what does a lobbyist, why would they be on a CPAB? CPAB is supposed to be for the community, not for paid lobbyists. And so I'm just asking you to really take a look at that. It's something important because I'm here to stand up for the second gens and anyone that is either trapped in Scientology at this point. A lot of the seniors are still there. And for anyone who's gotten out and who is damaged, serious, like they have a higher level of suicide rates, higher level of depression. It is a cult. It is not a religion as much as they would like it to be. They do have a 501c3, tax, status. I grant that. But I am here to stand up. I'm here to put my reputation on the line. I'm here to put my safety on the line, to stand up for the voiceless, the children who have been through this, the children who are still there, the massive amount of people who have cried out for help. There's hundreds of people that have begged for help for you to look into, the sexual assaults, the being held against their will, just different things. We're not talking about, okay, if you want to join a cult and give your money or whatever. I'm not talking about that. If consenting adults want to do what consenting adults do, that's different. But I'm talking about the children that were raised in this. And also their seniors who are, at this point, that they can't leave because they take advantage of all their benefits. And I am asking for help with that. I am going to be a voice for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker, George Bazzetti.
Yes, that's right. So, I really support that expensive ice machine. I know how very, very important it is to have officers have ice. They love ice. They love to turn people into ice, as well as put ice in their delicious beverages. And it's okay if a cop, puts a little vodka in there inside there with a little water. I'm not going to tell anybody if you drink on the job. I think it's okay to drink on the job, don't you? I think it's great. Yeah, it takes the edge off. Because, I know two of you commissioners are real shocked I'd say something like that, but when you put those ice cubes into that glass and you kind of swirl it around, put a little booze in there, it'll help keep the edge off the officer. After he gets done in the morning beating his wife after breakfast, my eggs were cold. No, bitch, I told you I wanted them easy over, slap. Then they go down and take a little drink of booze and they get in the car and they're a little bit at ease. This will reduce officer-involved shootings by as much as 74%, according to my statistics. So that's the reason for that. Good point. Yes. And of course we get to the chief's fake report. Yes, I was driving down the 101 there, Chiefy boy. Do you know the homeless criminals are burning the 101 freeway going to downtown, starting at Tarzana? Fire. Then over by Vineland, another fire. Going another fire. Yes. Oh, that's good. I appreciate you blocking my view of my pretty horns. So, of course, the real report is the homeless are out of control. They're burning the whole city down, Jim. What the fuck are you doing about it? What are you doing about this? And eventually, what'll happen is Jacoby and Myers, and by the way, this meeting is brought to you by Jacoby and Myers. Sue the city, it's about time. And also brought to you by Walker Vodka for your king. And of course, you have to understand that I have the evidence of the arsons, I have the videos, but you don't give a shit, Jim. You're here to cover up their criminal behavior, aren't you? I told you not to take the job, but you don't listen to me, do you? And finally, come on, Kalanche, step up. We had that nice lunch. You were going to come here and talk. You were going to talk to the Uncle Tom over here in the middle and stop throwing out Batman. Batman is a crime fighter. So he uses the N-word now and then. There's nothing wrong with that. If it is, then get rid of all the rap music. What would rap music be without our favorite word, nigger? It would be nowhere. So remember, don't be a criminal. And Jim, you could still resign and take the nice family and retire. Go ahead and do it.
The next speaker, Hamid Khan.
Donations are over $150,000, so that remains another way that money is being laundered to the LAPD, which brings me to this point about the DJI Mavic drone. And this is something that back about 10 years ago, when we released the drone report, we had mapped out that how mission creep works. And if people are not familiar with mission creep, it's a military concept, it's a military tactic, where you start off with claiming something that you're going to operationalize, and then it expands. It expands over time, and now where we are, crowd control, traffic monitoring, protest monitoring, surveillance, all of these things have become a regular function of drone operations. And when you bring helicopters into that mix, so what do you have? I mean, just as any other settler colonial state is doing that, you have the local Air Force in motion. And we've seen that how that has impacted communities, particularly in South Central Los Angeles on the east side and various other communities, how helicopters have really messed up. Now we have these drones constantly buzzing, and that's what we're going to see. The other thing, Kalanchi, I'm surprised that you don't bring up is about this whole operation of LAPD vis-a-vis the Sanctuary City ordinance that was signed. Now, when you go back to LAPD's own documents and the amount of retainers and ICE retainers that they have gotten, like you look at the documents from 2021, you look at the documents from 2023, you look at their own reports. On one hand, the claim is that we will not report them to ICE. We will not honor ICE detainers. However, I mean, how are you going to get around when you pick somebody up and the fingerprints are immediately sent to the FBI? How are you going to get around when you have Vigilant Solutions and Flock, your contracts with license plate readers, which are like Ring cameras, where LAPD has a contract with Ring, and this is how they were identifying protesters during George Floyd uprising, particularly going after black protesters. This is how they're identifying undocumented immigrants through the database, which is directly linked to the FBI and Homeland Security and DOJ as well. So for this to see this whole pulling wool over everybody's eyes, this bullshit about the fallacy of Sanctuary City, it is not. It is not. The LAPD is enforcing, and just the information sharing environment is real. Fusion centers are real. Law enforcement information agencies are real. LEIS, NCIC. We can go through the whole acronym suite. So I think it comes down to that it's your failing. The mass deportation as it's taking place and as it's moving in Los Angeles is on you, and you are responsible for the destruction and the separation of families and how people are being uprooted. So unless you stop these operations of license plate readers and information sharing and pull out of the fusion centers, and that may seem a lot, but unless you do that, you are very complicit in the mass deportation of how it's going to impact the immigrants.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Matios Kajane.
Okay, my name is Matias with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. And just to emphasize, I say this every week, this board is a sham. It really is performance. Like, it's theater in so many ways. It's to maintain the legitimacy. And every now and then, there's an instance where they forget their lines or an episode that they've already done. And we witnessed that today when, Kalanche, you asked a question about collisions, LAPD collisions. And it was, in the moment, like in the immediate context, like seemingly a prodding, important question. But then I remembered that this commission did a report on LAPD collisions just last year, where they did a whole kind of audit situation. And just to say, these are the things not involved, and you were on the commission when this happened. So even this question of policy regarding collisions is kind of nuts. But here's what you all have forgotten that you devoted a whole meeting to. Well, first off, not included, there was a collision in November in Sherman Oaks with LAPD, October in Westlake, August in Chinatown, May in South LA where an innocent driver was injured, August in Encino. And so these are all things not included in the report from April of 2023. And that report highlighted how since 2018, at least 4,203 pursuits took place since 2018. That's a 5-year span. Of those, 1,032 resulted in collisions that led to injury or death. So about a quarter, right? And then in 496 uninvolved people in these chases. So that's almost 500 were injured, 9 were killed, right? And then 462 people that you were trying to capture also ended up injured, with 5 of them dying. These are astronomical numbers. We're talking about, 4,000 over the span of 5 years. That's a collision. Someone do the math on that. But I think the only thing more astounding than that is you forgot. You forgot all this took place. Well, the question kind of erases all that context. And so it just goes to show that they're not really trying to do anything. LAPD's still kind of taking, doing chases for organized retail theft. And you're shaking your head, but that's frankly what's happening right now. But, this is all a reality they're trying to hide. And the way they hide these realities is by maintaining their legitimacy through community policing programs. And one such program is on the agenda today. We have Project Blue, right, by the Community Safety Partnership Program. And what this is a foundation effectively that claims to address the crisis of communities caught in a cycle of poverty and crime. This is really kind of cruel in that the LAPD, through CSP is extracting resources that are perpetuating these cycles of poverty and crime, right? But what it does embody is this inherent paternalistic relationship that the LAPD has with our communities, right? The notion that it's not a lack of money that's giving us a hard time. We're just inherently bad. And what we need is the LAPD to step in and help us. Also, I see Case Guard on the agenda, AI redaction software. Again, another means of hiding information. It's already hard enough to get a public records request from this department. You all hide information. You sue us when we publish public information. And now you're trying to use AI.
The next speaker, please, Quinn Ball.
Yeah, Matias already talked about this, but on the agenda, there's a verbal presentation on a special counterinsurgent program called Project Blue. As Matias mentioned, Project Blue claims it's trying to, quote, combat the crisis of communities caught in a cycle of poverty, crime, and violence. We know their true goal is to make poverty a crime, to tighten police control and sanitize surveillance through PIG-sponsored programs and tutoring. In other words, Project Blue is yet another police program rooted in white supremacy, unabashedly attempting to erase police violence and forced trust. We see this too in their attempts to, quote, win hearts and minds of the people via their community policing efforts in Chinatown. You bastards don't even speak the fucking language of the communities you enact harm in. You needed $1,200 for translating devices? Bullshit! These instances of community policing demonstrate your true goals to infiltrate, to control, and to surveil, all the while using the guise of caring about the community. In fact, Jim and Errol, I know last November you popped at a football day with paternalistic attitudes and carceral logic staining the fields you walked on. You're not mentors, you're menaces. Time and again, you've renamed and rebranded your tactics of destruction and war as quote-unquote less lethal. Like in the case of your bullshit trainings of over $2,000, we know your lethality is not due to a lack of training, but rather this donation will expand your arsenal and capabilities to enact deadly violence on Black and brown communities. Last year, you had a less than 40% efficacy rate when using less lethals. Then what is even their fucking purpose? You named it, quote, pain compliance, and even in your own language, you admit it. Less lethal still means lethal. You literally publicly state the aim of subduing people with your launchers, chemical warfare, and rubber bullets is to inflict pain and fatalities. So is it any fucking surprise that in 2024, 9 times you unleashed less lethals to enact pain while simultaneously firing your guns? You killed 5 people. This practice reveals that the deployment of such weapons is not a measure of restraint, but a highly calculated reinforcement of state violence and domination. Your trainings are not to reduce fatality. You train to learn how to inflict pain, and you train to learn how to murder. And your launchers, your community policing, they demonstrate you will use any tactics, any rhetoric, and any methods to murder. No matter how many football and soccer team pictures you have on your website, this commission's futile purpose is to sanitize the highly calculated state violence and domination you and your little piglets continue to wage. I yield the rest of my time. Fuck you.
The next speaker, please. Grace.
Hello. First I'll start off with talking about item 4C, the USC After Action Report, especially since I am a USC student, but have been punished in the past year because of the university's commitment to violence against its students and communities. And so these after action reports, as you've mentioned already, they're fictitious accounts of violent events used to sanitize LAPD's actions and limit the department's liabilities. In this case specifically, LAPD is minimizing the violence enacted against students, protesters, and condemning the genocide of Palestinians. And so specifically, I just want to note that the report...
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm sorry. Sir, would you take your conversation outside and let the woman at the podium have her 3 minutes? Yes, sir. You in the baseball cap. Well, that's not a me problem. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
Say that the report notes that there was only one baton push and there's only one use of a less than lethal weapon, but this is just false. If you see any of the videos that were taken by media who were actually blocked off by LAPD from entering the campus, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, there were an extreme amount of violence used by both LAPD and DPS. And if you took any of the time to actually talk to community members who experience this violence, you would know that these after-action reports are just complete lies. If anything, it should have also mentioned that a USC student is filing a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles for being hospitalized after having the LAPD deploy a less than lethal weapon on them. They're still experiencing trauma to this day. Even entering campus is difficult for them, yet nevertheless, they still organize against police violence, against state violence, and against the genocide of Palestinians. And this report, it really serves a clear purpose, a clear and nefarious purpose, that they shift the blame onto the victims of state violence and that it justifies the department's repression of dissent. And it also provides a blueprint for escalating and normalizing harm against communities. And it's really interesting how the LAPD and DPS and the University of Southern California has posed its own community members as threats to the safety of the quote-unquote campus, when we literally have a Department of Homeland Security Center on campus surveilling students, surveilling community members, sending that information to the FBI, and exacerbating all of the violence that is actually real and material and is causing harm to our communities. Yet that's where the money is going to from LAPD and also to these sorts of research quote-unquote centers that are supposed to look into counterterrorism, violent extremism, et cetera, when it's just like a smoke fog for, racism, anti-Muslim, and it's Islamophobic basically. And it's very clearly Islamophobic when you say that the factors for extremism is certain religions, wearing certain religious garments, having certain political beliefs, etc., etc. It's very clear that you're not even trying to hide that these programs are meant to target a certain people. And we've seen that historically that... Yeah.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Jamie Cusick.
How horrible to be back in this godforsaken room with its lies spread all over the walls.
How horrible to be in the same room for the first time with this murdering pig. And how enraging to yet again read an agenda full of funding for violence. Not that I expected anything different, but when I was glancing through these items, I did make the assumption that this donation for the Emergency Services Division was in some way related to the fires, LA's latest emergency. To be clear, not a natural disaster, but an event manufactured by white supremacist capitalist forces. I assume that, and obviously this is not a good faith assumption of any kind, I assume that under the guise of the fear and scarcity mindset that Mayor Bass, City Council, and all of you fuckers have been trying and frankly failing to inculcate with all this ludicrous bullshit rhetoric about looting and arsonists, I assume that LAPD was taking the opportunity to get more specialized emergency equipment or technology. But as Andrew noted, actually the Emergency Services Division is getting $11,000 for an office ice machine for use, not for use during emergencies, but for use in scheduled and air-conditioned meetings. Thousands and thousands of people have lost their homes, and you fuckers are about to accept money for LAPD to get concert band related expenses and $11,000 ice. These items really indicate that this is all business as usual. You fuckers don't even feel the need to pretend there's an emergency. This is exactly the type of bullshit that LAPD was up to before the fires as well as after. LA was a fascist and effectively apartheid state before this particular most recent emergency, and it remains one now. Before the fires broke out this month, there were already thousands and thousands of Angelenos who didn't have homes. Those folks still don't have homes. And this department's relentless squandering of money is what has always effectively caused houselessness in this city, and it's what in huge part caused the fucking fires. There is almost endless abundance in this city and county. We had the resources to mitigate, if not avoid this catastrophe entirely, and this department was enabled by you motherfuckers to steal those resources from us in allegiance to this department's campaign of racial terror and death. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay, the next speaker, Jason Reedy.
Okay, so during Old McDonald's swearing in as chief, some of the first lies he told was that LAPD's focus under his leadership would be transparency, accountability, and a commitment to every voice in every neighborhood. Now let's touch on that transparency piece real quick. How does the LAPD fare when releasing basic information? Well, we don't have to look any further than the fact that it took LAPD 24 days to release the names of the pigs who killed Benjamin Bradley on December 29th. We are now 17 days removed from your pigs killing Brian Rolstad, who you mentioned this morning, and the LAPD still hasn't identified who killed him. And we are 8 days removed from your pigs shooting at Tiffany Rufus, and you still haven't identified the shooters. I'll add that all three of these community members that you mentioned, not suspects, were in the midst of a mental health crisis. Now, the LAPD, who harps on the regular about how transparent they are, consistently delays releasing the name of any pig that shoots or kills a community member. 3 days is the policy, so why isn't that policy being enforced? To this commission who claims to be my voice in police affairs, why is it that I have to say something in order for these names to be released? Now let's talk about the accountability piece. We'll stick with the theme of a pig's name and serial number. In November 2023, a senior lead officer, Jorge Zambrano, said hello as I walked by shortly after leaving this clownish commission. I responded with the fuck you pigs, and his fellow senior lead officer, Elizabeth Southern, said don't listen to him, he's on drugs. When I asked for their names and serial numbers, she threatened to call DCFS on me. This commission demanded an investigation into the matter, so now we are 14 months removed from that. What's the status? What happened? What were the findings? Rasha, you came up to me in the hallway after that, after I gave my comment that day expressing fake sympathy about it, but have you followed up once on that investigation? Supposedly it was adjudicated in September. Now in an update on the other investigation you guys have going, because a detective from this department rear-ended the mother of this beautiful child, and the OIG informed me that my allegations against Southern were unfounded, despite a plethora of video evidence showing exactly what happened. Now, you'd imagine since I was the subject of this investigation that I'd be privy to its findings, but no. So just send me the fucking adjudication letter, Jimmy Cracker Corn. Now, before I forget, how pathetic is it that Errol Southers has this fake MLK quote in his email signature for USC? Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. That's a fake quote that this educator has in his signature. You should be using this real MLK quote. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. Now, wondering if you founding that POW program that led to the molestation of over 200 children will be included in your autobiography, My Life Inside the Castle Walls. Will Sarah Bell also ghostwrite that as she does any statement you give as the President's Commission? Now, Teresa, how awkward it must be for you, as someone that was once undocumented, to sit along Jim McDonald, who would have targeted your family. 5 years as a federal public defender representing mostly bank robbers, and now you're primed to defend the biggest bank robbers around the LAPD. Now, whether it be in Watts or Bunker Hill, I know you've seen the LAPD unleash its violence in our community, so remember, you aren't here to rubber stamp.
Thank you. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment allotted time, Mr. President.
The 45 minutes of public comment has ended. We will move on to the consent agenda items. You are disrupting the meeting. You're disrupting the meeting. Madam Secretary, who is the next speaker?
The next speaker is Megan.
Why do we need to listen to McDonald read the Chiefs report in a monotone? He can send it as an email, and then we can use that time for more community comments. And I just want to point out the only people who received reprimands in this meeting for speaking out of turn were black women, even though I was and Hamid was. And that's pretty consistent after every meeting, that you're always fucking picking on Camille, and I'm sick of it. You had to hear 3 slurs out of that guy before warning him at all. We give everything to policing in this city. $8 million a day to LAPD, $4 billion to the LA County Sheriffs, $1 billion to the probation system. We have airport police, we have port police, school police, park ranger police, campus police. We are 10 toes down on crime and punishment, and what the fuck do we get for all of that as the city burns down around us? I mean, wouldn't it have been nice to have more helicopters which can scoop water and dump it on the fire? But no, we have a huge fucking fleet of LAPD helicopters which can't do shit. So many reports of people saying they didn't see any firemen in their neighborhood until days later. It would have been real nice to have some more firemen. But hey, at least you arrested 19 people who were trying to sneak into the evacuation zone, and assuming they were there to steal shit, what were the demographics of those people? It's such an obvious pattern. There's never been a natural disaster where the police and media didn't label black people as looters and thieves. Yeah, no chance that they were there trying to retrieve their precious possessions for their family members or see if their house was still standing. So good fucking job making 19 arrests while the LA community, while the activists you're so fond of sneering at got out there and fed people and clothed them and replaced their possessions and provided masks and educated them about the risks of the air that they're breathing. What would it look like if we invested $8 million a day into making every home in this city safe for earthquakes and fires? Or simply just making sure that everybody has a home? I mean, wouldn't that be better than paying a ton of money to a bunch of narcissistic bullies with anger problems and arming them to the teeth? Wouldn't that be better than paying a ton of money to a police department that's the deadliest in the fucking country? Shoots more of its citizens than any other police department in the country. This department is awash in controversy, grift, and mismanagement, notorious the world over for its cruelty, its viciousness, its sizable numbers of white supremacists, child molesters, and domestic abusers contained within your ranks. You honestly must be so proud. Yeah, and at least y'all help put people in prison so we can force them to fight fires for less than $1 a day. Incredible, incredible work. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Andrew? Is there an Andrew?
Good morning, y'all.
I've spent the better part of 2 decades working as a high school teacher alongside youth of color whose communities have been ravaged by the violence of policing. So I'm here today to speak primarily on agenda item 4A to express my opposition to Project Blue. The project's own website sums up its impact saying, quote, 90% of families who participate in Project Blue programs say that they now know they trust one or more police officers, end quote. So there you have it. Project Blue isn't primarily intended to make young people safer or to improve the well-being of youth whose communities have been systematically impoverished and criminalized for generations. Its proudest impact, by its own admission, is to get members of these communities to trust the very people who surveil and threaten and incarcerate and murder their neighbors. This is called counterinsurgency. And to underscore this militaristic approach, I'll also point out that Project Blue is founded and is funded by Crown Robinson Family Philanthropy, whose fortune is built on weapons manufacturing, specifically from investments in General Dynamics, a company complicit in the violence inflicted on immigrants on the US-Mexico border and on the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people, using technologies that are then turned on the very communities that Project Blue pretends to care for. Shame on you for pushing this violent propaganda on our youth. Access to supportive resources shouldn't be tied to folks welcoming cops into their communities, and the city of Los Angeles should provide for the health and safety of every one of these young people through abundantly resourced schools and parks and recreation programs and everything else the people themselves uplift as their needs, with no fucking strings attached.
Sheila Bates.
So first, public comment should be unlimited, point blank, period. It should not take the audience reminding you of the fact that you are beholden to us, that you represent us, for you actually to do the thing that was right and just and necessary in the first place. Second of all, this order makes no sense. I know Melina's card ended up in before mine, and yet somehow I was called before. I wonder if it's just because you perhaps don't want to hear from her. The fact that we also have to have these meetings in this building, making community come literally into the belly of the beast is sick, but also absolutely on brand. The audacity of any of you to mention the survivors of the fires, when part of the problem is the fact that the LAPD, you all were overfunded, given additional money on an already bloated budget, all while Jim McDonald, this asshole, is getting paid almost $500,000. And LAFD, the fire department, is defunded. And then you have the nerve to sit here and say that you're defunded. And you don't even correct the narrative. While crime is down. And yet you go up to the Pacific Palisades, and you go up to places where people are ravaged by fires, and they've lost everything, and they're scared, and they don't have the resources that they need, and you show up and you criminalize these people. And you arrest them, and you dare to call black people looters when it has been reported that many of them were trying to leave their homes. They were trying to get their belongings and get their loved ones out and safe. Could you imagine being in that situation and then being called a looter? And let's also remember that calling somebody a looter is also absolutely anti-black in the first fucking place. Let's not pretend like that's not the situation. And that language was used intentionally. Meanwhile, the fire department was defunded in the midst of an ongoing climate crisis in a city that regularly has fires. It's not like we didn't see this coming. We knew the windstorm was coming. And I know y'all didn't have anything to do with the budget that the mayor put forward. Don't worry, I've got beef with Bass. But y'all submitted consistently for more and more money. Try to make the argument for more and more money. And you accepted $500,000. As was pointed out by the audience and Matios, y'all are a fucking sham. She sat there and she kept saying over and over again, we and us. You're not the fucking police. You're supposed to represent us, not them. Remember that. Remember that. It's been made crystal clear over and over again. Jim McDonald, welcome. We will make your life hell. Mark my words. You will join the likes of Beck and more. Your number of days are limited. They are counted, and we cannot wait until you're gone because we didn't want you here in the first fucking place. In relation to the report regarding...
Thank you. Thank you.
The next speaker, Melina Abdul. Melina Abdullah.
So I want to start by saying that the report on the murder of a human being near USC by LAPD went unaddressed by the police commission. And you all continue to behave as if you're part of LAPD when you're supposed to be providing oversight. You're supposed to be representing the people. So the question is, what are you here for? Does it boost your ego because you get to do ride-alongs? Are you here to really represent the people? I mean, it's really a rhetorical question because your behavior continues to show that you want to be we with them, not we with us. It's terrible that you don't uplift lives. It's terrible that you continue to rubber stamp budgets that steal money away from what the city needs. The city needs resources as we're ravaged by fire, as we're watching a fire and a catastrophe in another form, in the form of Donald Trump, who is now threatening to do away with things like food stamps and SNAP cards for people, as we're looking at today, people wondering if they'll be able to eat tomorrow. You continue to enable a police department that gobbles up half of the city's resources when we need those resources for fire, we need those resources for food, we need those resources for housing, for mental health. That's what we need. And so are you going to represent the people or are you going to represent the pig, in the words of Fred Hampton? Right? Are you the people or are you the pig? I also want to comment on the after action report. It's a farce. The idea that you could oversee an after action report at a USC that called in police on righteous students who were standing up for humanity, standing up for a free Palestine, and Errol Southers, your president, and a VP at USC is the one who actually called in police on them. How truthful could that after action report be? He's saying, I agree with myself. I agree with myself for brutalizing people, for stepping on First Amendment rights, for targeting Muslims and Muslim students, for taking away the accomplishments that they've made, for arresting Black mothers like Nikki O'Cook, for deciding that we will be the face of fascism, just close the gates so that the media doesn't see. So again, I beg the question to all of you, are you the people or are you the pig? Are you the people? Are you the pig? The people over and over say, defund LAPD. We know it's not popular, but it's the right thing to do. And we continue to demand a people's budget. The survey is in its 5th year. It's live.
Thank you.
Ernest Moore, please. Ernest Moore.
I'm here today to discuss your policies on a citizen's arrest. A citizen's arrest is a right of all American citizens. I have worked as a professional security guard in LA County off and on for almost 20 years. I have extensive training in powers of arrest. For the past 20 years in Los Angeles, I have had problems with LAPD when I try to make a citizen's arrest. This is a felony crime. For the past year, I have been working with a detective, Manuel Segura, who has an office in this headquarters building. The persons that I am demanding to arrest are involved in my probate case here in Los Angeles. These individuals have committed felony crimes against me, including grand theft, perjury, embezzlement, real estate fraud, and felony elder abuse. I believe Detective Segura is investigating, but as far as I know, no arrests have been made yet. I am asking assistance from this commission for this particular situation, or I will arrest the individuals myself. I have some documents here that I would like for you to see. Can I give these to them? And again, I'm requesting your assistance in this matter.
Thank you.
The final speaker is Adam.
Need a little bit more time than that, Hamid, for a song. But my brain's working. My name's Adam. I'm from Los Angeles Community Action Network's Human and Civil Rights Committee. First off, Dr. Southers, you called me the man with the green hat. My name is Adam, for future reference, but the reason that you perceived me to be disrupting the meeting is because I was questioning the lieutenant that was sitting in the back row, who refused to identify himself. I was, telling him about Special Order 13, which was passed by this department something like 15, 16 years ago, that requires a sworn officer to give up his name and serial number. Usually that's in the form of a business card. I went through that with him, and he just ignored me. And the reason I was asking him, and I will file with next request today, Jim, just to make it official, but I'm going to, pursuant to the California Public Records request, I'm going to request the video or the photos that lieutenant was taking of this crowd right here, and any communications relating to why the fuck he was filming the crowd. Are there not enough cameras in here? Do your senior late officers not have enough body cams on us right now? So anyway, apparently your lieutenants need a training on special orders that have been passed for nearly 2 decades. Regarding the after action report, we know that the LAPD after action reports are fictitious accounts of violent events used to sanitize LAPD's actions and limit the department's liabilities. In this case, LAPD is minimizing the violence enacted against student protesters, condemning the genocide of Palestinians. This report serves a clear and nefarious purpose. They shift blame onto the victims of state violence, justify the department's repression of dissent, and provide a blueprint for escalating and normalize harm against communities. And what this after action report, of course, won't mention is the bias baked into this fucking department. How many decades have you been sharing information, knowledge, training with the state of Israel? How many technologies have this department bought and shared with the state of Israel, who's been committing this genocide in different forms for nearly 8 decades? So, fuck your after action report. Have a great day.
There are no other speakers, sir.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll now move on to item number 3, consent agenda items. We have items A through L. I'd like to pull items A, E, and H for comment or question that I have. Vice President Shields, are there any items you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
None? Okay. Commissioner Calanche, any items that you'd like to pull? Commissioner Garcia, any items you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
Okay. And Commissioner Sanchez Gordon, any items you'd like to pull? None. Okay. So let's move on, and what I will do is move that we approve the recommendation for board items for all items A through L except A, E, and H. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. On item 3A, which is the department's report relative to the revolving training fund budget for fiscal year 24-25. Thank you, Chief Reyna. Mr. Rodarte. Good morning. And it's a question you've heard me ask before, and I know that we'll have a report or have had a recent report, but what I'd just like to know is, on that particular item, how many full-time employees are currently pursuing a degree or a certificate? It's pretty simple. And I don't expect an answer today, but I'd just like to know who's making use of that opportunity that the department is presenting.
I'll have, good morning, everyone. I'll have our senior management analyst too, Juan Rodarte, who runs our post unit, oversees revolving training fund. Answer that question, sir.
Currently, for the current year, we're at about 100K out of the 300K we set aside. So we're down significantly over the previous years. We can't really account for that. We are still advertising, we're still putting the information out there. The only thing I can think of is that more people are utilizing community college, which is cheaper than a university. So that's the only way we can really account for that.
Okay.
But year over year, we're down significantly, I would
Okay,
say.
thank you. Again, I look forward to having that information later. I was at a hiring mixer on Saturday at Amundsen. We had about 75 people who showed up that morning, and several of them did ask about that benefit. They are interested in pursuing and continuing their education if they're fortunate enough to be accepted to the department. And I just want to really understand who's using it, because it seems like quite a few, and it's a benefit to us in terms of our talent and expertise.
Sure, absolutely. And I think part of your question was how many people overall are using that? Or is it
Yes.
just the money? Okay, so we'd have to do some research on the numbers of people that are utilizing the funds for a college degree. However, just to say that Juan and his team do go to roll calls. They do put that information out. It's on our land system. We work with our career development unit that is going to roll calls and working with training coordinators to make sure that all employees are aware of the benefit to use the monies for college degrees.
Well,
And it's
thank
also
you.
talked about in the academy too when they come in.
Thank you. It is something that I think the department should be particularly proud of, and when we have that information, share it with the community so they understand that these officers come on, and despite a heavy load of a full-time plus full-time opportunity and job, they actually go on and enhance their education, which is a benefit to the city. Commissioner Shields.
I'll just ask one additional question relating to like the certificates or other things. I know that there are some universities that have like the conflict resolution programs. Would that type of tuition reimbursement program cover those types of programs as well if people wanted to get some additional tools on conflict resolution?
Correct, yeah, they would be able to utilize that program as long as it's an accredited university that they're going to. We can offer them the tuition reimbursement. Another caveat, though, is that they need to go on their own time as opposed to on duty. So that's another caveat for using the program.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments on this item?
I have a question. Might be a dumb question. What is, in 5 words or less, what's the revolving training fund budget? What is that?
So the revolving training fund is was originally approved in 1997, and it was later increased in 2001 to 1.5 million. The revolving training fund is basically a budget that receives reimbursements from either post or our college affiliate for putting on training. In short, that's the short version of it. So it's a fund where we receive reimbursements, in short, for putting on training that we have to then use to continue to put on training. So the funds within the budget must be used for training purposes.
And what happens to funds that are not met, you don't spend?
Typically, every year we do spend. There was the COVID year where we didn't spend every dollar. So money typically stays in that fiscal year, and we can still touch it for training purposes. A lot of the times we make revenue over the 1.5 million that we're budgeted at, and that money goes to the general fund. But anything that's unspent within the fiscal year can continue to be used for training. Often something may be requested and not utilized, so that fund that money would be encumbered and then unencumbered. So then that would be available money that we could then use for additional training. Usually for emergency purposes though, like last minute training that has to be put on.
You don't have to give it back. It
Right.
rolls over.
Right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions
I
on
have a
this item?
quick- I have a
Yes, please, go ahead,
Quick
Commissioner
question.
Conche.
For the tuition reimbursement, what percentage of their tuition gets reimbursed?
So it's a flat rate. It's currently $3,000 if they're going for a bachelor's or master's, and $2,000 if they're going for an AA
Per year.
certificate per year.
So, I mean, an issue could be that it's only a small percentage and they may not want to pursue it at this time for financial reasons.
Correct. We did try to match Cal State LA rates for part-time attendees, but we'll have to look at that again.
What is that rate? Just I'm curious for.
We determined it was about 3,000.
Oh, okay.
For the year, so for a part-time. However, yeah, we'll have to look at it again. That was a few years ago.
Got it.
I know it's probably increased since then.
And the question has come up regarding college tuition reimbursement. We did increase the amount for personnel to be reimbursed. And the question came up last time we came before the commission of increasing our overall revolving training fund from 1.5 million to 2 million so that we could increase tuition reimbursement to go along with the increases in college tuition and books and things like that. So that process has started already. So we're looking, it's a long process because this is governed by the charter, so city charter, so we'd have to go through many layers and many levels of review in order to increase that budget to 2 million.
Got it. And I have one more question. So we've been doing, over the last couple of years, I've been working with the public engagement section to do senior lead trainings, to have them learn more community engagement strategies. Could that be part of the professional development? We've always been struggling to find money or to bring in instructors. Could these funds be used for some of that training?
As long as it's training, there are some issues as far as paying vendors and the like. Typically, the majority of the fund is used by an officer going and paying for the tuition, the officer being reimbursed. Paying a vendor directly is there's some issues.
So, I mean, there's amazing instructors out there that would make it easier for us to bring in an instructor, train 200 officers. But I would love to follow up with you later.
Sure, there are specific rules in the use of the monies, whether it's sending people to training or having someone come to train us to make sure there's itinerary, what are they getting out of this? We have to make sure we follow the rules strictly. But it's case by case, depending on the vendor, the speaker, the training, we look at each one, so.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. I'll follow up with you too, Brandon.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of mentorship or guidance to the officers on how they potentially can take advantage of the fund and training for themselves? And is that in any way, or could it be in any way coordinated to what we're seeing are the potential needs of whether it's young officers or within the executive development category? So needs that we identify that are out there and courses and trainings that we feel are the most beneficial to meet those needs, considering the fires and the recovery path that we have forward, considering the big events that we have coming. Is there a way we can structure and help folks identify some of those trainings or encourage folks to identify some of those trainings? Again, some may just be ready to do an AA and they just go on, pick a major and take the coursework, but maybe not everybody will go that path. And so, again, being very targeted with how we support our folks and getting the right.
The post unit works closely with our career development unit. They literally sit right next to each other. And we, over the last 2 years, really started looking at, for example, leadership courses. It used to be leadership courses started on the upper command staff, and then we moved it down to captains and above, and now we're in lieutenants and sergeants. So we have a list of all sorts of leadership courses that we put on throughout the year, and we've moved it down. So now we're into the sergeant ranks and the officer ranks and the police officer 3 ranks to try to get them leadership classes. That's just an example of the things that we do. within Training Bureau to make sure there's classes out there for leadership and management. For example, our incident command system, we started a series of different trainings and working our way down through the ranks to make sure that they get that specific training in how to handle an incident command post on some serious incident that may happen, or let's say for a sporting event or whatever it may be. So yes, they're working together to identify the needs. So when Juan and his team go to roll calls, or the career development unit goes to roll calls, or I go to the training coordinators meeting, or just going to roll calls myself and hearing the feedback from officers of what they're looking for, we try to tailor our training for that and make sure that they're educated in that and what's out there and what they can do. We do get some strange requests, like say, for training. Again, we have to stay within our budget, we have to stay within our limits and our parameters of what we can do. But we do educate, we do put that out and try to tailor opportunities for personnel, and especially with the P2 and P3 ranks and our civilian staff, to make sure that these opportunities are there. And I think this year we're looking, for example, with our civilian staff, we have a bucket of the RTF money that's used for civilian training, and we've already surpassed that this year, which shows that we've been doing that educational piece for our civilian staff to make sure that they know that they can go to training, whatever it may be. If it's just simply going to take a course on computer software that helps them enhance their skills and their job, we're doing that, and we're seeing that they're utilizing those funds. So the word is getting out and the message is getting out.
Thank you. If there are no additional comments or questions, I move that we adopt the recommendation for board action on item 3A. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3E. Item 3E is the department's report relative to the donation for $10,000 for the LAPD Central Division. Okay, outstanding. Just let me know when the captain is there.
He's up. He just needs to unmute.
Okay.
Hello, I'm sorry, did you say Central Division, sir?
Thank you, Captain. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
So the question I have is relative to the purchase of the handheld translators that are going to enable Central officers assigned to Chinatown to communicate with monolingual Chinese speakers. My question is, are these Vasco M3 handheld translators in use in any other division and or in any other languages?
I don't know, sir, if they're being used in any other divisions. The sergeant that actually mentioned this, he has seen him in another division. I forgot to ask him where. But he did say that he liked them. They work really well, the ease of use, and also they're relatively affordable. But I don't know which divisions are being used at currently. I can definitely get that for you.
Okay. So, Captain, my question and suggestion is, Speak to Translate apps go for about $5.99 to $9.99 a month, or $99 a year, and they can translate into dozens of languages, and they're on the average smartphone. I'm just wondering how we might think about doing this differently. Instead of giving these officers another device that translates in one language, might we not give some consideration to an app that translates into dozens of languages for $100 a year per officer that needs to use it?
Yes, sir. I have been told that obviously Google Translate, I've heard and seen officers actually use the Google Translate, and I think they've been effective in communicating. What I've been told, and I have not used this Vasco translator. I've been told that it is really relatively small to carry, and it really the ease of use where somebody can speak into the device. It translates immediately. The officer can almost have a conversation with the individual, and while looking at a screen, and so the ease of use is why we decided that this may be a good idea. I'm not a big Google Translator user. I don't know if that's perhaps easier. I do think that there's certain officers that, especially in that Chinatown area, the senior leads and officers, a little older. I'm not sure if that's a concern. Usually a little older, so we thought that this would be a better tool for them, and also be able to pass along to other officers as well. So I can definitely look into the Google Translate app, like you're saying, and kind of look at the price ranges for that. We just thought this was a good tool, relatively easy tool to use and sort of pass along from officer to officer.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, and I wasn't suggesting the Google there are other apps. I use one myself. I'd rather not say which one it is, but it translates into dozens of languages. As I speak, it actually responds in the language I want it to, and that person can speak back to me in their language, and I hear it in English. So, in as much as these officers, every single one of them has a department phone, I thought it might be a thought to suggest that we subscribe to that app instead of another device they have to carry in the field that's only specific to one language.
Yes, sir. I can definitely have that conversation with our Information Technology Bureau and division and see what that would look like. I know everything's got to go through them, anything on a phone. I'm not big into languages. I do know that Chinese is character-based, and a lot of times a visual device is helpful in the particular situations. But we'll definitely look into that Information Technology Bureau and have that conversation with them as far as putting that on the department cell phone.
I see. Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
Okay, I'd like to know how many of these handheld translators were purchased for the $10,000? How many are there?
So this has not been approved, ma'am. We have not purchased any of the devices or items on the agenda.
What?
Each translator is about, depending on how you want it, $200 to $400. We were thinking of buying a good, we were setting aside about $1,200 to buy some of these devices. So whatever we can purchase with that, but none have been purchased as of now.
Okay, this handheld translator, you said it's in Chinese and it's in the Central District, correct?
Yeah, so you can obviously buy this online. We were trying to use it specifically for Chinatown community. I don't know if you know the background, but a retired Lieutenant Harry Leong retired from LAPD in 2015 from South Traffic Division. His family is the one that approached us and said, we want to help out the Chinatown community somehow. We had a conversation with him, and we decided on sort of looking at translators as well as how can we assist with that particular community. We did have a conversation with the Chinatown Service Center. That is a nonprofit that's located at 767 North Hill Street. And they suggested perhaps the translators and also some gear for an after school program, as well as helping out the elderly with some groceries and stuff like that.
I have one last question. The Chinese community has different dialects, Cantonese, Mandarin. Is that device able to translate those to other languages?
Yes, ma'am. All the particular subsets and dialects of Chinese, as well as many, many other languages and subsets of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did just want to clarify. I think that this is being proposed as being used for Chinatown, but the device itself, I believe, translates into like 70-something languages. So it's not just a Chinese translator. So if there's a need at another part for a different language, Russian or something, that can also be used there. But the focus for this one is really looking for the outreach to the Chinese community.
That is correct.
That's helpful because my original question was I wanted to know if this is in use elsewhere in other languages. So it would be good to know that.
Yeah.
Okay, Captain, thank you very much. We can follow up on this. Just kind of curious because this is something that is going to be helpful. It is going to help bridge the language gap. And with all the multiple languages we have spoken in this city, I think it's useful to have something like this. I just want to make sure that we're making the best use of the technology and providing it to as many officers as possible.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action on this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Captain. Moving on to item 3H, which is the department's report relative donation from the Los Angeles Police Foundation for South Bureau Homicide Division. And Chief Greetings, it's good to see you.
Good afternoon. Good to see you as well, Commissioners.
So my question is, that I'm looking at the categories here on the request, and it's $3,000 for morale, and it's funding for wellness and morale to ensure the personnel assigned to South Bureau Homicide Division receive the necessary support for the difficult assignment. I just found that number, knowing what resources cost for support, wellness, counseling, and other resources that happen in those instances, is expensive, and I'm wondering if $3,000 is enough. And that's my first part of my question. And the second part is, what does that provide?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. It was my understanding this donation was a $10,000 donation from an anonymous donor to the foundation to be utilized in 3 different categories: equipment, training, and employee wellness.
That's correct. And the line items have equipment, training, and morale as 4,000, 3,000, and 3,000 respectively. So I'm just asking again, $3,000 for an entire bureau to support wellness and morale seems low. And I'm asking if that is sufficient, or is this a beginning of a program that we're going to build on?
Well, annually, we have wellness days that usually consist of some training, refreshments, or lunch. And so when the grant was done, we utilized prior amounts that we do for wellness events. And Captain Bennett believed that that amount would be sufficient enough for the wellness portion of it. As it relates to the technology, that's updating our Cellbrite or any investigative tools that our homicide detectives utilize to bring justice to our victims. So this was just based on past practice. And as additional funding comes in, we can adjust.
Thank you. And I think I would be speaking for the other commissioners here that if that funding is insufficient, particularly as it relates to this matter of wellness and morale, please do let us know.
Absolutely, Commissioners, will do.
Are there any other comments or questions on this item? Okay. Hearing none, I would move that we adopt the recommendation for board action on this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Chief Degredes.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item number 4, regular agenda items. And the first 4A is a verbal presentation by CSP relative to Project Blue.
A lot of people. Yeah, okay, good. Because I was gonna ask you what the hell is Project Blue? Oh, really? I wanna go.
Good morning. So Chief, what I will do is, please, first let me thank you all for being here today. I'm well aware of your work, and I appreciate you being here so we could share this with the members of the commission as well as the people across the city. And with that, Chief, if you would introduce everyone, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Billy Brockway. I'm the Deputy Chief in charge of Community Safety Partnership Bureau. With that, Commissioner Suthers, Commissioner Shields, Commissioner Calante, Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, Commissioner Garcia, thank you for having us. Executive Director Sibley, Brian Buckner, my friend, Carlos De La Guerra, as well as Ms. Sylvia, Ms. Munoz, thank you so much for hosting us and having us give us this opportunity to discuss Watts Rams and I Play, I Lead. But before I introduce my illustrious panel, I would like to turn back to the row behind me. We have guests from Chicago PD that have come to visit us. They are creating their own CSP sites in District 10 in Chicago, which is one of the most dangerous parts of their town. So we've been working with Chicago over the last few years with Amada Tingrides and myself and Joel, and we're getting to the point where Chicago is going to emulate CSP in another city outside of Fort Worth, and as we start to progress through internationally. So with that, I'd like to quickly introduce, sir, the Director of Office of Community Policing, Glenn Brooks, Commander Lazaro Altamirano, Sergeant Leila Ruiz, and Sergeant Manny Guzman. They are embedded with us this entire week. We've done this on at least 2 other occasions. We've actually gone out to Chicago, and we're working on ensuring that the success that we've had here in LA is emulated in Chicago.
Thank you, Chief. With all due respect, I hope you're not going to Chicago in January.
I love Chicago in January.
Okay,
In fact, my son just got into Loyola Chicago, so
congratulations.
see if he goes. So with that, I want to introduce our panel. So my right-hand man, Police Administrator 2, Joel Lopez, our Assistant Commanding Officer who's been with CSP since the beginning back in 2010. To his right, Steve Robinson, the founder of Project Blue, co-chair of the Crown Family Charities. Next to him, Mark May. If you are going to get an opportunity to talk to Mark May, and his passion is unbelievable. What he's doing in South LA, what he's been doing in South LA is changing lives. Next to him is the president of the Watts Rams, Shakita Wesson, another person who's the backbone of the Watts Rams in South LA, somebody we rely on, and somebody who leads by example, and just an amazing person. And at the very end, Police Officer 3, Les Bodiford. Now I'm going to embarrass him real quick. Les Bodiford embodies CSPB and the LAPD. In 2020, during the COVID epidemic, we had a meeting in Harvard Park with the mayor, police commissioners, city council, the chief of police, and we brought forward the examples of what it looks like when CSP gets a chance to go into a community and have communication and safety. Les brought in a family, a father who never liked the police, had been through the system, and what I mean by that, had been to jail a few times, turned his life around, had a few children, and he entrusted those children to Les Bodiford, who's one of our mentors, football coach, and as you'll hear about, I Play, I Lead, which I know the commissioner knows about. He mentored these children. That father came to this meeting in the middle of COVID to talk about what he knows about life in South LA. And what he said was probably one of the most profound things that I've ever heard. And he had said directly to that group, growing up in South LA, when I saw police, I knew something bad happened, or I knew something bad was about to happen. Took the room down to hear a pin drop. And then he said the following: I have 2 children, I have a job, I work multiple jobs to provide for my children, and I entrust my children to Les Bodiford and our CSPB team and the LAPD team to mentor him, to coach him, because I have to work so much. And his response to that afterwards was, now when I see a police uniform, I know my kids are safe. I know something good is gonna happen, or I know something good did happen. And that's what CSPB stands for. That's what the LAPD stands for, is that direct line of communication and that direct line of engagement, of listening. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Steve Robinson to talk about Project Blue. He's the founder, he's an incredibly passionate man. He's a reserve officer with us as well, and believe me, we listen. Steve, to you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, Mr. Chairperson, Commission. So yes, my name is Steve Robinson. I'm actually a Reserve Police Officer 1 designate. I've been a police reserve officer for the better part of almost 15 years now. Typically, my year consists of about 1,500 hours of work. I started in 77th. I then went to Southeast, and now I'm upstairs at Major Crimes. So my experience has been through the department in many different ways. I've helped with technology from time to time and other various areas of the department. So, and part of the reason that I wanted to become a police officer, besides the job and some of the wonderful people that I met, was to hopefully one day, this is one of those days, have a voice for doing good, and have a voice that comes from, I would say, 3 three perspectives collectively somewhat unique in that I've been a business person in Los Angeles for the last 40 years. My wife, who is also with me, Janet Crown, and I have been doing philanthropic work significant work in the South LA Watts community for the last 15 years. And so with the business, the philanthropy, I thought, another interesting leg of the stool would be to be a police officer, so I would understand it from multiple directions. And maybe from that, we could figure out some ways to help more than what I believe was being done over the last, let's say, as I like to say, in the last 60 years. If you took a snapshot of these kinds of neighborhoods we're talking about at every decade and you put them on a table all in black and white, I would defy anyone to tell me which decade was which. And to me, that led to the belief that while there may be some good things that are going on, they weren't really working as well as I think most of us would have hoped over the last 60 years for them to work. So my wife and I went, because of the introduction I had to Watts through Johnny Coughlin, and I became very close with Johnny and others in the Southeast Division. They inspired me to really take a good hard look at that community and try to help figure out what we could do to really make an impact. And what we're all about is trying to make an impact. There's a lot of money being thrown at a lot of things, and there's very little reporting on true impact. And that was one of the deficiencies that we saw. We also saw one of the deficiencies is that while there's lots of money and resources going into these communities, they're all siloed. And when you're in a silo, that's not how we live. We don't live in silos. And so we started focusing on where we want to start, and we started with, let's look at kids. Kids are going to be the change. And we started talking in terms of generational change, not just change for a minute, not change for a year, not just working with a kid for a sports, for a 3-month interval of a sports program, but working with them from the age of 7 or 8 in 3rd grade all the way through 12th grade and then on into college or wherever they want to go from there, trade school, 2-year, 4-year, whatever it is from there. Because we looked at it and said, when you're growing up, you need academics, arts, athletics, you need life skills, you need resiliency training, you need mentorship, and you need guidance, and you also need to be presented with the idea of hope and opportunity. And from that, I was working with Johnny, and Johnny had Operation Progress. I know that he's been here to present what Operation Progress is all about. At the time we got involved with Johnny, it was very, very small, and it was, again, sort of one-dimensional. So we asked him if we could help him with Operation Progress. And he said yes, and we then put in what we would say at that time were our 10 pillars. We've now narrowed them down to 3 because at my age I can't remember 10 anymore. So we're down to 3 pillars, but they all encompass all the things we've just talked about. And at the end of the day, when kids come through our program, they end up with hope and opportunity, and they end up with all the skills, life skills, academic skills, and everything else they need to move on. So as we're working with Operation Progress, it then became apparent that what was missing, 2 things. One is that Operation Progress is not very scalable. It's very expensive per year per kid. And while it's helped hundreds of kids in a very meaningful way, we wanted to try to help thousands of kids in a very meaningful way. We had a great model in Operation Progress. We had great metrics. We proved it worked in a very significant way. And so we thought about and created what's called Project Blue. And Project Blue was born out of some of the things that we found missing, which were we should all be trying to work together, right? We should be pulling in police, city council, mayor's office, philanthropy, businesses, community organizers. We should all be working together towards the same objectives. And so that's one of our Project Blue pillars, which we call convening. Someone needs to convene all the necessary resources to help as many people as we can for as long as we possibly can. We then look at these programs that were going on, and as I think you guys all know, there's probably between 3,000 and 4,000 kids in programs inside of LAPD, which is wonderful, yet they're one-dimensional programs. And in and of themselves, they do some great stuff, but at the bottom line is, we need to grab kids and hold on to them from 3rd grade through 12th grade and beyond all year round, because coming in for sports is a 3-month gig. And after 3 months, which maybe you have a touch point of 1 or 2 times a week for 3 months, you then are not in their life for 9 more months. And the influences from other people in the community can be very strong. And we want to make sure we inoculate children as early as we can for as long as we can before they get to those parts in life which are, do I go left or do I go right? Do I make a good choice or make a bad choice? And so we wanted to say Project Blue is going to be an umbrella organization. What we will do for other organizations will be all back office work, all their administrative work, fundraising. We'll set up the 501c3. We'll do all the measurements. We'll do all the metrics. We'll do all the reporting. And if they need, we'll also give them a stipend of up to $10,000 to start or to expand their programming. In exchange, what we want from them is that you infuse your program with a few things. One, you make it all year round, and we will give you all the tools to take it from the 3-month interval to the 12-month interval, which will include, like I said, life skill training, mentorship. We have parenting classes. We have tutoring for academics. We get them engaged in athletics and the arts. Everything that a child needs to grow up to be a healthy child. We take it, as we say, we like to say, which is not a new term, a public health approach to helping people, not just a one-dimensional approach. So when we ask them to infuse their programs with these other, we call them the pillars, we look at that as elevating. So we convene and we elevate. And then we said, well, let's see, if you're of one small program of 10 people, you are a very small and quiet voice. If you're a few programs with a few hundred people, you're a little bit louder. But if you're dozens and dozens of programs with thousands of kids, then your voice is amplified significantly. If you have metrics on thousands of kids versus 10 kids that are that show all positive growth and positive impact, then you've amplified everything you've done. So we convene, we elevate, and we amplify. And the last thing we do, which frankly, since I've been working with in the police department for over 15 years, we are horrible communicators to the public. And we need to do a better job of that. Now, a lot of it is, to me, 150-year-old tradition. We just don't talk about our successes. We don't brag. Not true. I mean, not acceptable to me. We should brag about our successes. Maybe the chief shouldn't, or even this guy over here, but there should be someone that stands up and brags about the successes of the police department. Otherwise, this negative narrative will continue indefinitely. And let's be frank, the negative narrative leads to more bad outcomes than anything else, in my opinion. So we talk about communicate. So we have convene, elevate, amplify, communicate. And how we do that is through partnerships, programs, and resources. Programs, Watch Rams. Programs, I Play, I Lead. Programs, one of which my wife is heavily involved in, is called Healthy Room Project. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry, that's a resource. So programs like that. Partnerships. We're partnerships with the LA Rams. We're partnerships with LAPD. We're partnerships with many different organizations around the city and around the state. And then thirdly, it's resources. Resources that we have vetted, resources that we have direct access to, which we also help CSP with, would be trade schools, welding schools, domestic violence thing, whatever it is. The Healthy Room Project, which goes into kids' homes and renovates their rooms so they have a safe space, safe, well-lit space to live and learn and do what they need to do. So that's Project Blue in a nutshell. We convene, we elevate, we amplify, we communicate, and we do it through partnerships, programs, and resources. And the overarching goal is to try to get as many programs that are in LAPD under one umbrella so we can, again, elevate everybody, amplify everybody, and communicate these great stories and successes to as wide an audience as we can. That's what we are. Thank you.
And to Janet and Steve, it's very clear the passion is there. We want to come back at a later time to talk about some of the other things that we do, or Project Blue does, including the Healthy Rooms Project, which is critical, but I believe that needs an entire 10, 15, 20 minutes at the very least, because it's very dynamic what is going on to improve these kids' lives in South LA. So with that, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to Steve, thank you, sir, I can't thank you enough. His programs are saving lives. His ability to get out there and lead by example is saving lives. And part of that is his right-hand person, Mark May. As we know, and as people have seen on TV, Mark May has been, there's been exposés on Mark and his passion, what he's done in South LA. We just had one that was done with Christine Devine recently, where the commissioner and myself were there to see the ability to mentor these kids. The Watts Rams speaks for itself, and I'll end with this and I'll kick it to you, Mark. Steve and I were on a sideline with Janet at the SoFi Stadium for a Watts Rams football game. And in CSPB this last year, we had a pretty good year in crime. We had an even better year in community engagement, and again, really focusing on having those conversations. And Steve and I were having a discussion, and we were talking about what it is, the metrics that caused, or the options or the things that caused a reduction in crime. And we put our arms out and we looked out at that football field. We had 55 kids from the Watts Rams that were playing. And it's no longer the LAPD officers that are coaching the team, it's the parents. It's the community members coming out and coaching those teams. And those are kids that are going to stick with the Watts Rams and into high school and into college, which are the metrics that Steve was talking about. So with that, Mark, I hope I didn't steal some of your thunder, but I'd love Mark to talk a little bit about what he's been doing. And believe me, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So Chief, let me do this. I'm going to steal a little bit of Mark's thunder. First of all, Steve, thank you for your service as a reserve officer and you and your wife for all that you do for this program. And welcome to our colleagues from Chicago. But I do want to say the work is incredible. Last year we had a meeting upstairs in the Chief's conference room, and we had a number of CSP programs there, and they were all just incredible. And to your point, Steve, about speaking out more, I worked for a governor once who said, if you're the best in the world at what you do and nobody knows, you become the best kept secret in the world. So that's why I wanted you here. But I just want to say what really moved me that day amongst all the stories was listening to Mark talk about growing up. And that's a story that most men who look like us have been able to tell. And what the difference was that, Mark went on to do some very positive things he's going to talk about. He became an educator, and I said, wow, that sounds like me. And then Mark talked about the NFL. I said, no, that's not me. So I just want to say before he speaks that he is making a huge difference. He's a powerful individual. We've stayed and communicated quite frequently since we met that day. Probably one of the most incredible benefits I've had being a commissioner, because I wouldn't have met him if it weren't for this department and your program. So allow me to say to everybody here, thank you for what you do. And Mark, thank you for what you do. You're going to talk about that day we had out there. And I just kept saying, wow, the whole time I was there. So I've stolen enough of your thunder, except to say I'm very proud of you and your program and those kids, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. Your perception is mainly based off your experiences. I repeat, your perception is mainly based off the experiences you've had. Good morning to everyone. My name is Mark May, the CEO of Project Blue. And I come to you today speaking from my heart. I come to you today talking about the generational change that we all would like to see happen. But before I can get to the generational change that we all like to see, I'd like to give you some context of how I got to where I am today and why I'm sitting in this seat. During my time of working here in the community and working as an educator, as Dr. Southers put, I learned the difference between passion and purpose. I learned that passion is what you do for yourself, but purpose is what you do for others. And when I understood that the work that I was getting ready to get involved in with Project Blue in partnership with CSP, it wasn't about me. It was about everyone else that I had the opportunity to engage with to give them an opportunity that they rightfully deserve. I go back to my upbringing and what got me here, and it's very clear that everything that I went through at a young age was on purpose. I know you hear the phrase, and it's cliche that, God makes no mistakes, and he's going to put you through things that you can overcome, right? But growing up in the city of Compton and sharing in the city of Watts, where my grandparents resided, as a kid to a young adult, I never had a positive experience with a police officer. That's just the bottom line. That's the truth. My grandfather was a minister in church. He kept me grounded in church. My mom was an elementary school teacher. There was no way I was really getting in trouble in school because I went to the school my mom taught at, and she would show up in the classroom when I thought I was going to act out of line. So I tried to stay on the straight and narrow. And no matter what I did to try to walk this path that my parents had laid before me, I still found myself having negative encounters with the police officers that I experienced. For a very long time, I grew up with this hatred in my heart, knowing that hate wasn't what my grandfather taught me. but my emotions wouldn't allow me to get over the hate that I felt because of how I was treated in certain situations. I say that to say that's who I was. My perception was based off the experiences that I went through. I became an educator like my mom, and I started teaching in Watts. And during the time that I started teaching in Watts, I started to notice that at this particular school, there was a nice flow of traffic of LAPD officers that represented the Community Safety Partnership Bureau. When I saw them coming, I would go the other way. When I saw them coming to interact and engage with the kids, I would go to my office. But there was one officer in particular who just kept finding where I was. And this officer in particular didn't look like he belonged in my community. But as many times as he approached me, as many times as he tried to talk to me, as many times as he tried to engage with me, I didn't want to have anything to do with him. But he never gave up. He found a commonality. He found something that resonated with me, which with youth sports, because I was a coach. And when you're working at an elementary school or a middle school, you find yourself coaching every sport there was. So I was a soccer coach. I was a football coach. I was a volleyball coach. I didn't play any of those sports, but football, but I figured them out. And he came to me with an idea and he says, hey, I know you don't want to have too much to do with me and I respect it, but there's a football team in the neighborhood that really needs some community leaders and I think you'll be a great fit. It was up until then when I finally gave him a conversation, when I finally felt that, okay, he's speaking my language now, we can have a conversation. He introduced me to what we know now as the Watts Rams, but back then they were the Watts Bears. When he introduced me to the Watts Bears in the program, he left out some very valuable information. The information that he left out was that the program was coached by police officers as well as community leaders. He just told me that there were kids. I showed up, I went to practice, I started coaching. I started working with some guys and we really found a liking to what we were doing because we realized the impact that we can have on these young people's lives. We started coaching together. We started building relationships with each other. The relationships that we built on the football field of trying to mentor and educate these young men and women to be the best football players that they can be carried out to me and one guy in particular leaving practice and going to LA Fitness to play basketball because we thought we can still hoop. We started going to play basketball. We started to exchange numbers and we started to stay in contact with each other. And it was 3 weeks into the season when this particular guy showed up in the black and white in the police uniform. And I looked at him and I said, yo, how long you been a police officer? And he said, I've been a police officer for over 10 years, dude. I said, you lying to me. I thought I was being pranked. Like, is this a joke? And it was at that moment in my life where I realized God was being intentional in my life. God was being intentional in the places that he was taking me and the opportunities that he was giving to me. And God was also intentional when he put me through the things that he put me through because he guided me through those things as well. It was at that moment where I realized that now my purpose in life is different. My purpose in life is to be a convener of people, is to educate people on both sides, is to bring people together so everyone can share the same experiences that I was starting to share. I realized that this work needed to go beyond what I can do at the Watts Rams or the Watts Bears at the time. So I started to work with Operation Progress in the school that I was at and started to mentor kids from a more deeper perspective. It was at that point where I was introduced to Mr. Steve Robinson and Miss Janet Crown Robinson, and they came and presented an idea about Project Blue. And at that time, I was very hesitant still because I didn't know what that meant. I've been at the school. I've been teaching for 15 years. I was comfortable. I was happy where I was, but I realized that this was purpose and this was a calling from God. And that calling from God was that he was giving me an opportunity to be there for my community and be a voice for my community, but also be a voice for the officers and bring both sides together of their understanding and education and empathy. I took the job, and I talked to Steve and talked to Janet, and they told me that they will empower me to be me. They will empower me to be my true, authentic self, and that's who I have been as I've been the CEO of Project Blue. CSP has been very, very influential in allowing Project Blue to expand. To be able to have the officers and connect with the officers and build relationships with the officers through our youth programs. Officers like Les Bodyford don't become Officer Bodyford to our kids. It's Coach Bodyford to them. It's Coach Les. It's a big brother. It's an uncle. It's a father to many that don't have fathers because they see him for who he is. When my community approaches me and asks me, what am I doing working with the police? I tell them that I'm educating the police, just like I'm educating you. Our police officers through Project Blue attend youth trainings on mentorship. They attend trainings on cultural awareness. They attend training on relationship building through Project Blue that allows them to go out there and understand the kids that they are serving, understand the families that they're engaging with. So when they go out into community and they're not coaching at the time and they recognize little Johnny or little Mary, little Johnny and little Mary recognizes them too, and we get back to that village mentality of raising each other. I had an opportunity to meet Dr. Southers, and I invited him out to one of our young men's mentoring program, where he got to come and see members of the community come together with members of law enforcement and put our differences to the side on the behalf of our young men. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what uniform I wear, regardless of what shirt or what jacket I wear, I am a person, I am a human, and we want our young people to understand that. Project Blue has been that impact. We surveyed our kids in our Project Blue programs, and we asked them a question that before a Project Blue program, do you know an officer that you can trust and call on? And 90% of our kids and families said, now being a part of a Project Blue program, I now know an officer that I can call on, that I can trust. You're talking about impact. That's impact. But impact only comes from education. Impact only comes from having empathy. Impact only comes from giving each other grace to feel the way that you feel, to go through what you went through, but also understand why and not judge people. That's what we created, and that's the voice that I'm trying to bring to Project Blue. In closing, when you talk about this model for change and this expansion that we're trying to do, when you see Chicago Police Department here, looking at CSP, CSP is a game changer. CSP is a model that should be put into not only across Los Angeles Police Department, but for the world. Because in order to really know someone, in order to really get deep and personal with someone, you have to build a relationship with someone. Our officers have to understand that when they're going into these households, they have to understand why the community feels the way that they feel. They have to understand that these community members are coming and speaking from a place of experience, or from trauma that have been passed down from generations before them that ended up on their doorstep. Our officers now are coming into these households and they're doing their job, but they're also following up. They're also going back to these households and realizing that when I took daddy away, that I took away the breadwinner of that household. So now I'm going to connect them with a program like Project Blue, who has resources, who can come back and fulfill this family that I just broke because I was doing my job. That's the empathy that we need to have. And CSP is the model that's going to create that change. Project Blue is the vehicle that can drive us there. In closing, Chief McDonald, you got an opportunity to come out to the Nickerson Garden housing projects. Through CSP and through Project Blue, we had to watch dolphins in the CSP site of the Nickerson Garden housing projects with the Watch Rams. We had kids from the Nickerson Gardens, and when you talk about the Watch Dolphins, you're talking about the Jordan Down housing projects. We had a football game on that field with CSP officers coaching with community leaders, coaching kids and bringing coaches from the Jordan Downs into the Nickerson Gardens for a day of unity, for a day of peace. I had one of the coaches from Jordan Downs come to me and says, Mark, I'm nervous, I'm shaking right now. But because you said you got my back, I'm here. And he showed up with his kids, with his parents, and it was one of the most peaceful days we had in the community. I'll close out by saying I had a young man who started in one of my programs, but I taught him since he was in 2nd grade, and he's in 11th grade now. And when I was working with him in junior high school or elementary school, he had a mother who was just always that parent that called me, because at this time I'm the vice principal and I handle discipline. And she would always call me when something happened to her child. And every time this mother called me, she was just like my mother. She was loud. And if you didn't know her, you wouldn't understand her, because she would come at you with this loud, vibrant personality. So every time when she called me, I was like, you know what? What's going on now? What happened? What happened? Because something had happened. I don't like the way that teacher handled my child. I don't like the way that teacher was being unfair to my child. I don't like the grade my child received. But she called me this day and she said, I need to talk to you right now. I need to talk to you about one of those officers in your program. So at this point, I'm in a meeting. I said, I can't talk to you right now. I said, but you know what? Let me step out, because you sound like something is going on. And I think that's important. We have to be there for our community when our community calls. We have to be there for our officers when our officers call. We have to be there for each other. So I stepped out and I took her call, and this woman says, I need to talk to you now because one of those officers from your program just pulled us over. And I said, well, what happened? Is everything okay? She says, nah, everything is fine. I'm in tears right now because that officer recognized my child from your program. That officer recognized my child, and he wanted to pull my son over and tell my son how much of an impact he had on his life. He wanted to tell my son how great of a job that he did during that 10 weeks that they got to spend together in a relationship-based program. And she said, and he also wanted to introduce my son to his partner, who was new to the department and who had never worked this community before. And he wanted this officer to know who my son was based on who my son was. And she's in tears at this point because she says, I didn't believe in what you were doing at first. But now, because of this encounter, I now believe, and I will follow you every step of the way. When we're talking about change, I want you guys to stay grounded and stay understanding that it's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be some roadblocks. There's going to be some barriers. There's going to be some people who don't agree and who don't believe in what we do. But if we steadfast and we stay grounded in what we know is right, these stories are going to continue to happen. And experiences are going to change the perception, not only of the community, but of the officers as well. Thank you for your time. May God bless. I would now like to introduce Shaquita Weston, who is our president of the Watch Rounds football team.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Shaquita. About 4 years ago, I found the Watts Rams on social media. I was looking for an avenue because I had a young son that just needed more than I can give him. And so I went out to the program, especially because it was a no cost. I was a working mom. I couldn't afford it. So being there was a blessing. And I was just volunteering. And the next year I got a call like, hey, can you be the president? And I've been the president ever since. The reason I continue to show up year after year, despite my own personal responsibilities, is that I know what it means to just be that seed planter. I believe each and every one of us in this room can think back to our childhood on one or two people that were adults or young people or whoever it was that made an impact on our lives, whether negatively or positively. It's because I sit here today because of a couple of people in my life as a child that made that impact on me. And I see it every day out there on the field with our officers who are being a support for us, whether they're showing up to practice, whether they're showing up to schools, because we have some of our officers will go check in at a child's school, or whether they're showing up to our community days where we're cleaning up the neighborhood. Like, the impact of their presence is what keeps me coming back, because I know the change that it can be. It can change the trajectory of a child's life. And as fate would have it, on Friday I was because I also live in the community. On Friday I was at a coffee shop across the street from Nickerson Gardens Project Complex, and a young man and his son was there. They allowed me to get my coffee first, and I just said, hey, thank you, but what do you want to do when you grow up? Because I know that's a question that you think kids are asked, but they're not. And so like Mark was saying, our experiences change our perception. So if we're asking a simple question like that, it could just have a kid to start thinking. But anyways, he said he wanted to be a police officer. And I know this kid is not a part of the Watts Brown program because I know all the kiddos, well, most of them. But just the fact that he said that, and it made me think that the work that we're doing with I Play, I Lead, Watts Rams, and everything else under the Project Blue umbrella, we're planting seeds in these kids, and they're going back home, they're going back to school, they're going back to the community, and they're planting more seeds and watering those seeds, because eventually we want these kiddos who may not have the experience or the opportunities that other kids in other communities have, we want them sitting in these seats that we're all sitting in today. So I just stand here proud and honored to even be sitting here and to be before all of you, just to say that what we're doing, it really works and it's making an impact. Sometimes you don't see it right away, but when you look at the bigger picture and the compounding of each and every one of us in these kids' lives, we are really making a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Shaquita, so much. There's not a lot of words that I can say after hearing both of you speak, but I would like to have Coach Les talk a little bit about I Play, I Lead, and his coaching with Watts Rams early on, and transitioning from all LAPD coaches to the community stepping in to coach the kids.
Good afternoon. I'm Officer Les Bodyford. First of all, I just wanted to say how I'm just really grateful. I'm very blessed to be a part of this panel here. This is why I decided to be a police officer, to be able to be put in positions and have the opportunities to reach these kids that kind of grew up how I grew up. My father was in and out my entire life. Him coming home was more important than Christmas to me sometimes, because it would happen so often. But when I work with people like a Mark May, like Miss Shaquita, it's just the passion that they have to help the kids. It's unmatched, and I'm really grateful. Wherever they go, if they call me, I'm running, because I know that they want it like I do. It's very important to them. Organizations like Watts Rams, Youth Leadership Council, Gentlemen's Collective, all these other organizations that are under the Project Blue umbrella, they just give myself opportunities to be me, to think of ways to help these kids, to think outside of the box. I bring my kids to a lot of these events that we put on, because I just want them around good men, and my son, my oldest is my 12-year-old daughter. She changes on me every 15 minutes, so I try to keep up with her, but I know my boys and myself, and every boy is born with this fire. You have a fire, and a father is supposed to mend that fire and tend to that fire, and that fire can go out when that father's not present. And I had a couple surrogate fathers and my football coaches, a teacher. I want to be that to them. I want to be that spark. That's why I wake up and come to work. Almost 15 years ago, when I decided to take this job on, my whole mission was to change LAPD, not leave it how I found it, but remain who I am in the process. 15 years in, I think I'm starting to finally catch up to that. I hope to really see, what happens by the time my 30 is up. But I know with people like this panel here, Mr. Robinson, I've seen you around. I remember you was at 77th, and I didn't know your story. I didn't know who you were, but you would get after it, foot pursuits, or everything. I'm like, man, this dude is getting going, man. P2 dog. But and then to hear you talk today, the first time I heard you, the passion that you have for what you do, I thank God to have you out here, man, because you're really changing lives, and I'm seeing it firsthand with the kids that I interact with on a daily. So just thank you. And to Commissioner, everyone, thank you guys for just allowing us to speak and share our piece. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Les. To the commission, thank you for the opportunity for Steve and everybody up at this panel to have an opportunity to talk about the passion and the purpose that Mark brings up. In my phone, it says Mark May, the man, for a reason. And Chief McDonald, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity, to Inspector General's office, Mr. Django, to everybody. These are the conversations that we have to have. The success that we're having with CSP is longstanding because of Joel and Amada back in 2010 starting this with others. The more we have the conversations, the more we have an opportunity to talk about the success, the better we're going to do. the better we're going to be able to expand within the department and better to expand within Chicago and nationwide. So I will tell you firsthand, there are days that I don't want to go to work. There are days all of us maybe think about not going to work, but it's because people of this panel, people that we work with every single day, we know that it inspires us to get up and make a difference. Because sometimes work is work, but the vast majority of time, it's making a difference. So I thank you, and I'll open it up to any questions for our panel. And again, just thank you for the opportunity, everybody here today. Thank you.
Well, Chief, words cannot express my thanks. But before I do open it up to my fellow commissioners and everyone up here, I mean, those folks from Chicago came a long way. So anyone who would like to address us or share with us what your experiences have been and what's going on in Chicago, we'd be welcome to hear it if someone wants to share that with us.
Good afternoon. I am Director Glenn Brooks with the Chicago Police Department. Thank you for having us, and thank you, Chief, for inviting us and letting us come here and kind of experience. One thing I do want to say about the initiative, the clarity of purpose is absolutely necessary in order to have sustainable success, and CSP has clearly demonstrated that. The second most important component is just to have the support for leadership. I've been with the department for 20 plus years, and I've seen many wonderful initiatives come through. Those that are sustainable, that truly make a difference, are those that have a clarity of purpose, that are supported through the leadership, not for the month or the year, but throughout time, where it gives Executive Director May the opportunity to have success, to make the difference. And here's the difference. The difference isn't just the safety of the community, but the strength of the community. And we are coming here to see how LA has been able to do that and be sustainable. And that's really what we're hoping to learn from this trip. I can't tell you, everyone has been beyond a gracious host, but beyond just being a gracious host, they've really opened up and shared the knowledge and experience where we're able to take some of these lessons back home to the great Windy City and embark them throughout our neighborhoods. So I really do want to thank everyone here for their generosity and the opportunity, and to everyone, just really thank you very, very much.
Well, no, but thank you for coming out. And the only thing I'm going to say is, as you embark on this new endeavor with a program like this one, reach out to Caleb. We miss him here in LA, but we're glad he's with the Bears.
Yeah.
And see if he might be willing to support your program there in Chicago. I think you couldn't have a better person to engage with the community than Caleb Williams.
Yes, we shall. We're lucky enough. The Bears have been very supportive, and we wish for a better season, though. But it's coming, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Oh, we get to talk a lot, and so I'll keep it short because I'm definitely a huge fan of CSP and the CSP model. We've been in conversations, Joe, about CSP since its beginning. Yeah, we weren't gray back then, but. Steve, thank you for your investment, not only your investment in funding and supporting and seeing the vision of CSP and adding to it, but the investment in the time of, and you mentioned it, really getting to understand what it is to be on the ground. And I think that's one of the things that philanthropy should do more of, or should do better of. That is invaluable. To have the understanding, to be able to direct the funding in the right places at the right time and see it through long term. So it's the same. So thank you. We appreciate everything you do in that space and aspect, and to your wife as well, obviously, and anybody else involved in your circle that is a fan and behind this effort. And to the folks involved, I mean, you said it. There's nothing I can say better than what you already did and what you all do, like really getting being that bridge, right? Really getting the community to work with law enforcement, and in a way that can be difficult at times, and more so in certain communities where that bridge doesn't seem like it's a genuine bridge or a realistic bridge or a mutually beneficial bridge. But the way you described it, the way you presented it, is what we want to see more of, absolutely. And so, just thank you, and I appreciate it, and keep up the good work, keep up the passion, and more success. And we have a lot of CSP sites that can use the extra support. So appreciate you all.
Thank you. Commissioner Calanche.
Just want to thank you for being here and all the work. I used to run a nonprofit in the Ramona Gardens area, and I know how much passion and work it takes to be really committed to not just the program, but then all the other things that encompass serving a young person. So thank you for your work, and I'm glad that we have a woman leading the Watts Rams. I was going to say the Rams, but the LA Rams, maybe one day. No, just kidding. Yeah, one day. I just have a question more related to our CSP program. I mean, the goal would be that all of our officers, you know, in LAPD could be connected. And I think, Steve, that's your dream, right? That, and I was looking at your website, that all LAPD officers could be connected kind of the way that CSP officers are connected. So I think that's a dream and a goal that we need to kind of think about, because we don't, I mean, every community can't have a CSP, but we want officers to feel like they can be connected to community. So that's something that I would love to like chat more about with you. The other thing is that built into our CSP program is the CSACs that Mr. Lopez runs, right? You oversee the CSACs, the Community Safety Advisory Councils in each different.
Transition to kind of the resident advisory councils and stuff. So,
We don't have CSACs
yeah.
anymore? Oh.
No, we do have some CSACs. So the CSACs are kind of independently run now by the community, and so we still participate. We're still a part of them. Yes.
Oh,
very
okay.
much
So I wanted to, because the dream of the original like CSP program is that the community could then kind of take ownership and leadership of like what happens in their community, so that you're not relying like we're gonna have 10 officers forever, right? So I'm wondering how you're working with the CSACs in order to like really build that relationship and how that's working. And it doesn't have to, yeah, we don't have to like discuss the whole thing, but I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, so our officers are very much engaged with the CSACs, the resident advisory councils, the school safety collaborative meetings. So every CSP site has kind of different meetings, and so we're a part of those. And so we share in our programming, we report out to them, and we invite them to be a part of it. There's a CSAC at Ramona right now that's also very engaged with not only our Lincoln Heights new team that's also been picked up by the LA Rams and supported by the LA Rams and Project Blue. So it continues to be driven by, again, the RAC and the CSAC in terms of, you know, our approach towards what the needs are of that community as it relates to public safety.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is, and Steve, you probably could envision this, the original purpose of the CSACs was to even bring all the service providers into one space. I don't know if that's happening, but I think that's the goal. What you're talking about is like how to bring all the service providers to work together. So I'm just putting it out there because I know this is one of the original like foundation of CSPs, that the CSACs would have all the service providers, law enforcement, city government, exactly what you're talking about. So I'm planting the seed because that's something that I believe in our CSP program needs to be strengthened. So I just wanted to bring that up as like, how do we make that connection?
Commissioner, real quick. So I'm sure you remember we got a chance to walk a footbeat in Nickerson Gardens and meet with our CSP officers. And one of the things that you instilled in my mind was very clear: building community capacity. So building that community capacity is there, and Joel could talk about the CSACs, and we can obviously talk about different organizations that we're working with and getting the word out. But what we're doing internally as far as the department's concerned, at the chief's direction, we've identified 2 senior lead officers at each one of the 21 geographic divisions, plus some of our officers and the commands for each of the 21 geographic divisions, to have quarterly training about CSP, about infusing the model, having a point of reference in case something does go sideways, where one division may not have the resources possibly then we can lend those resources and help out, and which did happen after our last training. One of the things that came back after our last training, which was in December, Jennifer Alvarado, who everybody had a chance to meet a few months ago, was one of our first Operation Progress, went to Boston College, and grew up in Imperial Courts, and then ended up going to USC for graduate school. She is going to be our leader in creating, not training for our personnel, retreats for our personnel and for the community to have those conversations about what success looks like, to building that community capacity from the standpoint of not law enforcement or policing, but from the community that we serve. So as we move forward, that is key for us to be able to strategically plant this throughout the entire department. Hopefully, as we continue to expand our CSP sites, if that happens, and continue that conversation, because we have the building blocks. We just need to make sure that the communication is clear, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we had everybody here. They run us, and we're here to support the community.
So just to kind of, I think, Steve, you get what I'm saying, right? So, thank you. Yes, you get what I'm saying. Now, the CSACs were supposed to be that space that you're talking about, so, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
Well, this is the first time I hear about this program. This is my second meeting as a commissioner for the LAPD. And I am totally impressed because, and I can relate to it so much because I'm a kid from East LA who was raised in an environment that nurtured me in these community projects, these nonprofits that helped my parents with their kids after school and exposed me to so much that I don't think I could have been exposed to living in the type of community I was, leaving my community and seeing all these other neighborhoods and how people live and how, just opening up my world. And I think this is what one of the main goals of this organization is. And I think that type of mission allows children, like you mentioned, to just fly, and like it allowed me to fly. It allowed me to go to college because I wanted to go to college. I didn't know anything about college before. It allowed me to become a lawyer. I didn't know a lawyer when I was growing up. It allowed me to become a judge of the Superior Court. And now it allows me to be here and listen to this amazing program that I want to be part of, because I think that it just fits right into my purpose of life, being part of the community and giving back to the community. So I congratulate all of you. Chicago people, I don't really know Chicago, but my grandfather worked in Chicago for many, many years in the foundry. And I know that there's a very strong Mexicano community there. And through my grandfather that I really, really didn't know, I relate to Chicago and I want to learn more about Chicago. But right now I really want to express to you that I want to get involved in this project. And I really congratulate Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, Steve and Janet, and for having this commitment and luckily the wealth to be able to put this together. And thank you. And of course, things don't happen without a great CEO. Thank you, Mark. And these two other people here, thank you. Congratulations. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. So what I'm going to say is, again, just thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for everything you do. I hadn't seen it firsthand. It's one thing to hear it in a presentation upstairs. It's another thing to go out there and experience it. And Mark, you've just been priceless, really changing my life as a commissioner and really giving me hope. So just, if there's anything the commission can do to support you, to amplify your message, to amplify your resources, please let us know. Mark keeps me apprised of your calendar, so I'm happy to share it with my fellow commissioners for the things that he's doing. And again, to the Robinsons, just thank you for your philanthropic efforts, and thank you for your service to the department. So with that, I'm going to just say, on behalf of the commission, we're here to support you, and thank you very much for coming today. And I'm going to suggest that we take about a 10-minute break and come back at 12:35. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so is this a pee-pee break? Yeah.
The commission will resume our regular session. We'll go to regular agenda item 4B, which is a verbal presentation by Recruitment and Employment Division relative to recruitment and hiring. I know I have Captain Patillo and Chief Rayner. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chief McDonald, Mr. De La Guerra, Mr. Buckner, Mr. Sibley. I am here with Chief Reyna to give you a brief update on recruitment and hiring for the department, and this is a follow-up to the presentation we did in last October. On the staffing of background investigators, on January 13th, 10 officers and 1 supervisor began on loan to be trained as background investigators. They've completed the required post-training, and they're doing further training with my staff. There's currently up to a 4-month wait for a background investigation to even commence. The current average background investigation time is 118 days, and the average hiring time is 250 days. My prediction is with the addition of these resources, there will be a shorter wait time for backgrounds. We have an additional 9 officers that have attended the post-background investigator school, but they have not been brought on loan. There would be challenges to bring them on loan, including desk space and additional licenses for the portal that is used, but I will deal with that when we get to it. Hiring metrics for 2024. We saw year-over-year increases in applications, multiple choice tests, personal history statements submitted, physical fitness qualifiers, and polygraph examinations, all increases. We saw decreases in the number of background investigations completed, and then consequently, we saw decreases in psychological exams. If someone does not go through backgrounds or pass backgrounds, they will not progress to psych, so which is why there's been a reduction on the second part of that equation. I think the decreases in the background investigations completed does support the department's initiative to loan these additional background investigators to the task force. The January, this month, our applications and multiple choice tests have been very strong, and we may end the month with the highest testing numbers that we've had in 4 years, even though we had to cancel 1 seminar due to the fires. Marketing update regarding our contract with the firm VGCA. They have been on track with their proposed timelines. They have conducted market research, presented creative work, proposed a marketing strategy that fits within our budget. They are currently finalizing the creative materials. We anticipate the marketing and advertising to launch by the end of February or beginning of March. And it should be noted that VGCA is helping us redesign our hiring seminars, presentations, and promotional flyers as well. Recruitment continues to have a strong social media presence on our Join LAPD platforms, and I welcome you to follow us. Additionally, over the holidays, a short film was played in previews in the movie theaters for approximately 5 weeks, and these were across Southern California. There were over 2 million impressions, and an impression is defined as a count of how many times an advertisement is shown to a viewer. So over 2 million impressions. For hiring, the Class 225, which is scheduled to begin next week, currently has 38 LAPD recruits appointed. That's a higher number than our fiscal year average per class. Year to date, fiscal year, we've hired 236 recruits. That's an average of 29 per class. That's not including the class that's about to start. The breakdown is 21% female and 79% male. Recruitment programs. Our recent hiring seminar attendance has been strong. President Southers, I appreciate that you attend ours as many times as you can. There were 68 testers on Saturday, but I do want to point out that the previous 2 weekends we had events, and those totaled 236 testers. SkillBridge interns, we currently have 11 active. 29 total have been appointed to LAPD since the inception of the program, and 127 program participants since inception. Associate Community Officers, or ACOP, 21 currently active, 38 have been appointed to the department since the inception. There have been 113 program participants since inception. This position is not exempt from the city's prioritized critical hiring process, and I know that we have many competing civilian hiring priorities. But there's an additional obstacle, which is we lack the resources to hire them, even if we were to be given the exemption to hire them. It would require a full police background, full medical, a psych exam, and a polygraph, and that would take resources from the efforts to hire full-time police officers. So I'm working on a solution which may include changing the ACO job bulletin and job description so we can potentially change the onboarding process to something less complex. And that concludes my presentation. I thank you for your attention, and I'm prepared to answer any questions if you have.
Well, Captain, thank you very much. Chief, thank you. As you know, I missed your one session last month because I was out of the country, so hopefully that'll suffice as an excuse. But I was there last weekend. I continue to be amazed at the people who come here from out of state a day before and stay over. Last weekend, we had someone from New York City and from New Orleans. That's not unusual. So to your marketing and recruiting efforts, that's a process that's working very, very well. I also want to say, obviously, 118 days for the average background and 252 days for the average hire, we are going to continue to lose people. So at the risk of sounding like a broken record, anything we can do as commissioners to help you, please let me know. I speak to the mayor more often about this topic than any other in the department. It is a priority, and if there's anything we can do to help expedite that, I mean, you're there. I see people come in there that are well-educated, physically fit, veterans, and to have them wait 118 days or possibly a year or have them hang on at the risk of other agencies in this county that will go unnamed, that will grab them from us, we can't continue to do that. So let us know how we can help. I did want to ask one question. How is, and if you wouldn't mind, especially for Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, who's here at our second meeting, explain Skill Bridge, and I'd like to know how that program is going.
Yes, President. The SkillBridge program allows military participants during their last 6 months of their contract with the military to come be an intern with LAPD. And they're paid by the DOJ or the military, and we assign them to various areas and geographic divisions. So they help out in detectives and they learn about our department while they're in the hiring process. And the goal is to potentially get them through the hiring process and hire them very close to or as soon as they are discharged from the military. So the program is great. Every SkillBridge intern that I've hired, when I read their background and I see that their references come from current LAPD supervisors, detectives, and they speak the world of them. But it's a program that we're constantly trying to recruit military participants to attend and to join us. The challenge can be that because we have such a backlog in the system, if they don't have their DD 214, which is their official discharge, LAPD or personnel department does not look at them as ready to be hired. So they may be put on hold pending the DD 214. And we're trying to work through how we can balance out processing them while waiting for the DD 214 and then hiring them as soon as they're discharged. Smaller departments, I think, have a easier time with that because they may have 10 candidates in mind, and they work the candidates until they are just about discharged, and then they just snap them up the minute the documents received. Since we're we're handling so much volume, it's a little harder for us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, before I open it up to my fellow commissioners, congratulations on 38 people. My last graduating class had 21, so I haven't done the math, but that's a significant increase. So again, I continue to applaud and support your work because it is working. People do want to become police officers, and they do want to come to LAPD, so thank you for all of that. With that, Commissioner Kalanchi, any questions or comments?
Yes. Thank you, Captain. I know how committed you are to this, and how hard you're working. Couple of questions. Can you give me the name of or the title of that document you just described? The
DD 214.
DD-214. And it's just a personnel policy?
What I understand is when we appoint them to a post academy, the discharge, the official discharge, has to be in hand. And I'm sure the military has their own processes, and those documents probably don't get sent out the very day the person is done with their military service.
Okay.
I don't know what the delay is. So the personnel department has been looking at these candidates as they're qualified, but they're not quite ready to go. So they've been put in on
And they're
a
not
holding
quite
pattern.
ready to go because they're still in the military?
Yes, because that discharge paperwork should be in hand. And we are trying to find a balance. Like, can we work their backgrounds and then have them wait if we don't have the DD 214 when everything is done?
Yeah.
We can't appoint them to the academy without it.
Commissioner, it's sort of like
Yeah.
college graduation.
Like not having their college degree.
You graduate on Friday,
Yeah.
but you don't get your degree in the mail for another month. And so they're waiting for their DD 214, which is the actual document that says
Yeah.
they're separated from the military.
Yeah.
So
And that's the holdup.
if I can add, for personnel department, their position is they can only go so far through the process and have to stop before that form is in hand, where we believe we should be able to continue on in the
Yeah.
process right up to the end and then get the form at the end so that we're not wasting time in it.
So I'm just wondering if, and I don't know, I don't know the personnel department, but if a council motion could help that. That's what I'm thinking. Could like a council motion say, we will waive that policy and ask, and as long as before they start on the job, before they graduate, that they have that in hand. I mean, something like that, we could reach out to council office to see if, a council member to see if they would introduce that. I'm happy to do that. Just to see like what the possibilities are, because that seems like a super like technical thing that, I mean, yeah.
And I think it comes down to, again, we're dealing in such volume with the number of candidates that are getting processed. And when we are looking at such a big volume, they start looking at who is available and who is absolutely no blockades, that they can just go forward and get hired. And we're focusing on those, but that creates a delay. And I've been working with the personnel department, especially if I have someone in the Skill Bridge program and I'm already investing in them.
Yeah.
I would like to invest resources in them so they are able to be hired right away rather than have a delay for 3-4 months. And we're also looking into if the military has made any improvements on transmitting those DD 214s. And you'd think in today's modern technologies that it might be more instantaneous, but again, we have to find.
I just
find
think
out.
that there's like opportunity in the city to like be a little bit more flexible. The other thing, just a question about the ACOP program. What was the challenge there?
The way
I didn't understand the exempt and yeah.
The way the bulletin was written, the ACOP, when they are hired as an ACOP, it's a requirement that they apply to be a police officer at age 20 and a half. And if they don't want to apply as a police officer at 20 and a half, they're not supposed to be an ACOP. So we can't really hire an ACOP unless we know that they are suitable to be a police officer, which is why the bulletin was written, and they get a full police background to post standards, medical, psych, polygraph, all the other testing. The unfortunate part is, let's say I hire them at 18 as an ACOP, and then they apply 2.5 years later, we have to do the background again. They have to do the medical again. The polygraph would probably stand. They probably have to do another psych. So it's taking up resources.
Yeah. What would be the solution?
Well, the background itself, I guess historically, we were having active background investigators do these backgrounds. But then it was decided that we were in such a push to hire full-time officers, we needed to have the background investigators concentrate on that.
Right.
Personnel department at one point had outsourced these ACOP backgrounds, but it was expensive. And there was no written agreement as to that they would agree to continue expending the money, and their budget was cut. So about a year ago, they said, hey, we can't afford to keep paying for these backgrounds. And they felt it's really not productive because the hire rate is somewhere between 25 and 30%. We have had ACOPs that after they've done it a few years, they said, I don't think I want to be a police officer anymore. So that got me thinking of how to change the hiring of those positions and the requirement of the position. I would also say if we're saying apply at 20 and a half, what if you're in a 4-year college program and you're not scheduled to graduate until 22? Yeah. And we found conflict in that. Some of them would have to make a choice. Although with the hiring process being about a year, they might be able to do both. But, it is very rigorous to go through the hiring process, and it's rigorous to do college degree as well.
Yeah, it seems like the ACOP program was supposed to be like a become a police officer, get you ready, and then you start. But
Yes.
It's not necessarily happening that way. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if there's like a way that we can make it work. Because I think the other issue we were having was there's a lot of cadets. I mean, I went to, cadet graduation, and there's a mentor cadets, and why aren't they, becoming police officers, right? Not all of them become police officers, and is there like a pathway? Yeah.
And I recently met with the POP program.
Mhm.
Again, it would be great to be able to offer them the ACOP position and bridge the gap. Although a lot of the graduates of the POP program should be eligible to start applying for the job.
Yeah.
So what the solution really is, after I've had many conversations with personnel department and personnel division, the job bulletin for ACOP would have to be changed. The job description would have to be changed. The requirements for the job would have to be changed. And perhaps if we can do all that, we can design a position that doesn't require all those resources to onboard. And perhaps we can even just encourage them to become police officers,
Yeah.
or they may time out. There's a 5-year
That
time
makes
limit on the
sense.
position.
And maybe the ones that do want to become police officers, we could start some of these processes and have a longer window to complete.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and it was discussed at the commission a couple months back when we talked about this, where if someone was to come on, if we changed that background and did a civilian employment section background, which isn't as intense as a police officer background, and they're going through the process, and if they decide at 20 and a half, 21, I don't want to be a police officer, well, then you can still join the LAPD and the city family in an administrative position.
Yeah.
And you already had that background done and slide into that position instead of just losing that person
And where is
altogether.
that?
Well, that's part of this whole revamping of
Okay,
this,
cool.
an idea
Okay.
to do that, so.
Well, let us know how we can help.
Thank you.
Because I think that's a real it's a real possible way to solve some of these issues that we're having. It's just like changing some of these things that are not working,
Yes.
but that there is potential. Okay. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
for that. Thank you for thinking of outside the box solutions to some of these issues.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Commissioner Garcia.
Quick question, with the increased allocation in background investigators, have we identified a goal in terms of how many number of days to process the background process, the actual hiring? So from 118 to what, and 250 to what?
All the background investigators do not belong to me, and personnel department still maintains, if I'd have to guess, potentially 25 background investigators. Some are full-time, some may be part-time. Also, some backgrounds take longer than others. It just depends on the candidate, where they've lived, what kind of life, how old. So our goal was to have backgrounds done within 45 days. If I think a lot of the background investigators have caseloads of 15 and up. And we know that we have over 100 of unassigned backgrounds. It wouldn't make sense to just assign them to the background investigators who are already overloaded. And that's not up to me, that is up to personnel department. So adding resources to the problem, I think, can spread the load. And hopefully, we're always looking at the process to see what we can streamline.
So, and Commissioner, to add, in discussions with Personnel Department and discussions with Commission, with our chief, and with Councilman McCosker's committee about two things. One, identifying efficiencies and working with Personnel Department to implement those efficiencies. And two, also, background investigators for Personnel Department during their public comment session in these committees had voiced their concerns of being understaffed, like Captain Patel was saying. So part of this task force is to bring in these officers to supplement, whether it's a 10 or we go to full 20, depending on if that happens or not, to allow them to assign these cases, spread that workload out amongst 10 new people, if not more. And hopefully our prediction is over the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months, we're going to see the increase in those cases being closed and being put through for review, and hopefully see the increase in those academy classes. So that is the goal of the task force altogether, is to not necessarily list goals for everybody, but just to overall work together as a team to address the backlog, to address these unassigned cases, to start getting the throughput and have these academy classes increase.
Okay. If there is a goal that can be identified at some point, whether it's as we see it progress and the how much those extra bodies will help, but if we can identify a goal sooner, could that help in any kind of market material? Like, are there folks out there, and again, we don't have an applicant problem, it's a hiring problem, but are there folks out there who are choosing to go to another department because they know it's going to take 250 days and they don't want to wait? And so if there's something there that we can apply and build some excitement for our applicants, let's use it.
The biggest chatter we hear is, hey, my portal says I've started backgrounds, but I haven't heard from a background investigator. And then when they do hear from a background investigator, they may be told, look, I've got lots of cases in front of you, so you're just going to have to hang on and wait. So if we can spread the load more thinly, maybe we can pay more attention to these candidates and hopefully retain them in the process.
And cut down on that chatter, that online chatter where someone may be disgruntled in the system who's saying it took forever for me to go through this process, so somebody doesn't want to go through now because they're afraid they're going to, or concerned they're going to wait months. We want to cut down on that chatter and build the positive dialogue that, hey, they've taken steps to increase this process to make it quicker and faster and more efficient. That's part of the goal.
Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Before we close, just so I have a really good understanding, these background investigators are working for personnel, correct?
Yes, it's
Okay.
like on loan for a task force. Yes.
Right. So my question is threefold. Do we have background investigators looking to just background police officers? B, are these investigators backgrounding LAPD employees, sworn in civilian? Or C, are they background investigating anybody applying to the city of Los Angeles and we take a number and stand in line behind the city's employment process?
My background investigators, I had 8, and then I just added 10 plus a supervisor. They're going to be working strictly on police officer backgrounds for LAPD.
Okay.
It's my understanding that backgrounds for LAX and Port are either done by a different entity within personnel, or perhaps even within those departments itself.
Okay.
At a much smaller volume.
And again, I don't have a challenge with LA Airport and Port, as long as you don't have a background investigator who's doing backgrounds for a city employee of any of the departments we have across the city, as well as police officers.
That is not the agreement.
Okay.
If that was to happen and came to our attention, we would address it immediately.
Okay, great. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I still believe in our early acceptance program that we discussed last year. I don't know how we do that, but I go there every Saturday, once a month, And I see people sitting in that room that I know, absent some background issue that we are gonna find, educated, fit, at least looking at them, that you know they're probably not gonna be a problem, and then they sit for a half a year and they're gonna go to another agency. And I'm just wondering, like a college admission, can we have an early acceptance to say, if you'll stay with us for 90 days, we'll give you an answer? If you don't, by the 91st day, if you don't hear from us, you're welcome to become a free agent to any one of the other 30 agencies in the county.
I would love to get to that point. I apologize that I can't promise that with the resources that we
I understand.
have. They do get the conditional offer letter if they pass after their department interview. I think that was the intent of the conditional offer, but what happens is, as a whole, the system is falling a little short after they get the conditional offer. We can't live up to those promises.
I understand.
So we don't make
And,
them.
and if we can't get to the point in agreement with personnel department on a conditional offer, which may take some time, one of the efficiencies we're working on are the easy candidate. The 22-year-old, we've talked about this, President Southers, the 22-year-old who's lived at home, had one job, college degree, has never been arrested. They shouldn't go to the back of the line. I understand there's philosophical differences in this, but in lieu of working a difficult case or a few difficult cases, and then this person is going to be snatched up by another agency because there's no issues there, to try to move that person up because we have to fill the seats. And we're not filling these seats, and we need to do that. So that's one thing that we're working with the personnel department on.
The only thing I'll add is the obvious, they're applying here because they want to work here. So, thank you again for all of your hard work. Thank you for this periodic update. It's very, very useful. These are numbers we can use when we're out there talking to people. And just keep up the good work. We'll work through it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go on to agenda item 4C. I'm going to recuse myself for the department's report on the University of Southern California campus protest after action report. Commissioner Calanche will assume the chair. And Commissioner Calanche, the chair is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Southers. We have I just turned off my page. Item 4C from the regular agenda, we have Director Rhodes. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Chief, everyone. I realize that I am following great presentations, but what I lack in numbers or inspirational thoughts, I'll try to make up with brevity. As I think you are aware, the purpose of my presentation is to ask you to accept and transmit to the City Council the after-action report regarding the events in the spring of 2024 at the University of Southern California's campus. As I think you also know, the department always does after-action reports for unusual occurrences. In this case, the City Council also asked us to do one, so we would have done one anyway. This unusual occurrence and all that we do after-action reports are to assess the LAPD's performance and the response that the LAPD provided to any event, and not to critique or evaluate the response of others. So it is limited in that way. We do these because we have the core value of quality through continuous improvement, but we should not believe that just because we intend and always strive to do better, that there was anything deficient in April of 2024. And again, while I always have the privilege of speaking to the Commission and presenting after-action reports, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the people who actually do the work during the action rather than just the after-action. And I hesitate to call people out by name because I'm sure I'll miss someone, but a special thanks goes to Chief Amada Tingarides and Lieutenant Scott Wilhelm, who was the watch commander of Southwest, for their action during the time and also for their help in writing this report. And this report was written in large part by Lieutenant Roy Yu of the Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy. So I really need to thank all of them. As I think you can see in the after action report, there is a chronology that there's both a summary and then addendum 2 is a detailed chronology that you can read. As you know, after October 7th in the spring of October 7th, 2023, in the spring of 2024, there were protests at many institutions of higher education, including nationwide, and then regionally, UCLA and USC. So in very brief summary, there was a help call that was put out by the Department of Public Safety for USC to LAPD, and thereafter there was a meeting between Incident Commander Deputy Chief Amada Tingarides and DPS. Thereafter, the event received the resources of LAPD Metropolitan Division, Tactical Support Unit, and Air Support, among others. A tactical alert was declared. Ultimately, there were 94 private persons arrests made, and those individuals were booked at 77th or Metropolitan Detention Center, and there were 2 uses of force. As you also may note, we have a fairly strong memorandum of understanding with USC, and that talks about the LAPD having exclusive domain in events such as this. Finally, I would just highlight the fact that, and perhaps stating the obvious, USC is a private institution, and so the arrests, the majority were made for trespass. There was, however, 1 more arrest, so the 95 in total for assault with a deadly weapon. And then the last very portion of this report is about recommendations. There were 3 recommendations. 2 are really for transparency and internal record keeping for the department. I'm sure you can see those are very similar, if not exactly the same for UCLA and the after action report there. And then 1 is made for training. Again, the same as UCLA. These events occurred at approximately the same time, and so our recommendations are very closely aligned. And with that, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to attempt to answer them.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Garcia, any questions?
Yeah, so is the 95th, whatever order, arrest identified in the report?
Are the 94 arrests?
The 95th, you mentioned there was...
95, yes. The
Yeah.
94 private persons arrested for trespass and the 1 for assault with a deadly weapon.
Is that one identified in the report? I only saw the 94.
It is identified. Let me just get you the page. It's not detailed, but it is identified on page 5.
Got it. Yeah, I see it.
Was that the throwing of a...
Yeah.
So under crime and arrests, 94 individuals were arrested for violations of California Penal Code 60201, trespass, and 1 person was arrested.
Thank you.
Questions or clarifications, Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon? Since anything you want clarified, I think it would be great for you to ask.
I'm looking at the use of force, and I do have a question about that. You said there were 2 use of force cases.
Yes.
This 40 millimeter less lethal launcher, what does that look like? And what is that?
I think we can show it to you perhaps after this. It looks, you sometimes see our less lethal launchers slung, and you will see it in use of force review boards. To me, and I am not a tactician, so I hesitate to say, it almost looks like a big water gun or a
beanbag.
It's a beanbag. It's a really tight beanbag. So I don't know, Chief, you might want to.
But the structure is about that wide.
Oh, that's right, it's like the rubber, yeah.
So Commissioner, I would just say, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but when I looked at the after-action report for the summer of 2020, I actually went to our training facility to handle these and use them. And if that's something that you might want to engage in.
I think all commissioners have done that, so I'm sure that'll be something that'll be scheduled.
Probably.
Yeah, you'll get to even shoot it. So you could.
It just gives you a feeling.
So you understand, yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of injuries could result from something like that?
So
Or does it depend on where it hits the body?
I think it depends on where it hits the body, how far away the person was, and what clothing or other things the person was wearing. So we've seen really a number of injuries. The purpose, I will just say, the purpose of the after-action report is not to really go into uses of force, sorry, but is rather to highlight that there were some and anything that we can do in terms of transparency, accountability, and our internal workings. But we did look at video to look at this. We did, but we are not the final adjudicators.
Okay. And it says, and one baton push. So that's the second use of force?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks. I just want a little bit more information on the recommendations. I see the recommendations, but what are we doing to implement some of these recommendations? Is there anything in the works?
So in terms of the third one, that's a new policy that has already been in effect. I think these, in February of 2023, it went into effect. So I think there is continual training. As you know, it's a large department. Training does take time, and we are always working to improve our technology, to improve our accountability. So things are in the works. I don't have a specific end post where I can say things have been better because, of course, these are things that happen during an unusual occurrence.
And the shifting away from the paper ICS 211s, is that already in effect?
I think, so I know that our IT department is always looking to try and push that. There have been a number of innovations within IT.
And I'm assuming that as a result of this incident, we're changing how we real-time report uses of force because there was a lag connected to like reporting it at the moment to the commanders that were in charge.
There was a slight lag. The larger lag was at UCLA.
But those are things that are being addressed, I'm assuming.
Yes, we are working on all of those things.
Yeah, go ahead. I have one last question, and
course.
you may not know the answer, but as a result of these two incidents of use of force, is there any litigation pending on that?
I believe there is litigation pending on the one.
Thanks.
And thank you. And again, to clarify, the arrest, the 94 arrests were trespass arrests because USC is a private entity that asked us to come in and do private persons arrests.
Yes.
It wasn't like we went in there and we're going to arrest people because, yeah, go ahead.
I answered too soon. I'm sorry. Is because USC asked us to come in? Yes. We don't make private, we are law enforcement. So
Right.
the Los Angeles Police Department doesn't make private persons arrests. These arrests were actually made by DPS.
Oh, DPS. So we didn't
And
arrest
both of
them.
them.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you
Yes,
off. and I
yes.
answered
No,
too quick.
That makes sense. Yes, I read that. But I just wanted to clarify because it paints a different picture. Like if that is super, super clear, right?
So to be clear, we did not have an option of using trespass at a public entity.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So we need a motion to accept the report and transmit to City Council. Is there a motion? So moved. So moved, Commissioner Sanchez Gordon. A second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you so much, Director Rhodes. Thank you. Thank you. And now we're going to call back President Suthers.
So DPSS means,
DPSS is the USC Police.
okay.
So you should have gotten this report in your weekly.
And I just didn't click on it, I didn't know that. Click on it.
Did they show you how to use your, I don't know how to use it, but.
My computer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with it. I'm struggling with it.
But you know what I do? I don't even look at it all the time, just because I get that too. Yeah.
We'll talk later. I need tips.
Thank you. The commission will now recess into closed session. Thank you very much.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss Agenda Item 5A1 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
The commission has concluded closed session. We'll have a readout by Executive Director Sibley. Director Sibley.
Thank you, President Suthers. So regarding item 5A1, which is canine contact requiring hospitalization, 6-24, at the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on January 28, 2025, during the closed session, the board made the following findings by a 4-0 vote. For canine deployment, consistent with established criteria, 2 police officers, 3. For canine contact, consistent with established criteria, 2 police officers, 3. And for post-canine contact procedures, consistent with established criteria, 2 police officers, 3. And that concludes the report out, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. With that, I will move to adjourn today's meeting. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.